Chapter 908, 15th Day of Bloodshed. Chapter 908, 15th Day of Bloodshed. When the two leaders of the rebel faction died, the rest of the soldiers also quickly surrendered. Those troublemakers who seized the opportunity to cause problems were gunned down and executed without mercy. From the perspective of following orders, these mech fighters were unrivaled, carrying out orders to a T. They had no fear and only sought to complete their orders, making them the best soldiers and cannon fodder. A long time ago, these mech fighters had appeared on the battlefield of Cloud Region. However, they had not met a powerful AI, like Bai Yi, to help control them. At the same time, there was an obvious flaw in them. That was the fact that their fighting style and strength were rigid. No matter how much they fought, they would not grow nor become stronger. Other than that, there were other weak points as well. A single electromagnetic pulse bomb could cause thousands of such mech fighters to be crippled. Thus, the human soldiers could not be totally exempt from battle. Yue Zhong took big strides into the middle of the city. Behind him were 20 warriors in Type 4 battlesuits. Along the way, the soldiers within the city were on either side of him, staring at Yue Zhong, their hearts full of uncertainty. Yue Zhong came up to Lin Xian and asked indifferently, "I heard you were the first to fight back. What's your name?" Lin Xian looked at Yue Zhong uneasily and replied, "Replying to sir, my name is Lin Xian." Yue Zhong's eyes flashed with appreciation. "Very good. You did well. I will confer you to be a youth commander. Go select 500 men to be your subordinates, and go take down the other rebel cities." 500. Lin Xian's face changed, his body trembling, his face ash-like. The Fire-Tooth City was the city where most of the rebels had gathered, with over 70% of the elites gathered. However, there were other rebel factions in other locations, and while they might be riffraff, their numbers were in the tens of thousands. If Lin Xian had to lead 500 men against such a number, they would surely die. Yue Zhong replied, "Other than the 500 men, I will deploy 5,000 mech fighters and 5 Reapers under your command. Do you have the confidence to do it? If not, I will not force you." Lin Xian trembled with excitement as he got down on one knee and professed his loyalty. "I'm confident, Lord. I have the confidence to take down those cities. Please allow me to serve you." 5,000 mech fighters were a powerful force to these ordinary soldiers. With it, Lin Xian had the confidence to crush the remaining rebel forces. The other soldiers that had joined Lin Xian in the uprising looked at him with an envious gaze. He had leaped to a different status in one day, from the lowest citizen to a general. Yue Zhong then shot him a cold look. "Lin Xian, let me make things clear first. Against those rebels, those who do not submit, you can kill them. However, if you or your men dare to pillage, rape, or mistreat anyone in the cities, don't blame me for being merciless. Understand?" A force of 5,000 mech fighters with Bai Yi's control was basically unstoppable against these rebels. Yue Zhong had chosen Lin Xian to be the leader of this unit. One was to allow these people to fill up the gaps of these mechanized battalions. The other way was to fill up his ranks for people who were loyal to him. If Lin Xian was able to suppress and defeat those rebel forces, Yue Zhong would then have a reason to recruit him, allowing him to become a pawn in the military. At this time, the military of the capital was made up of a mix of people from different factions. If Yue Zhong wanted full control, he needed all the help he could get. Lin Xian's face was filled with respect as he responded, "Yes." Yue Zhong patted his shoulders and promised, "Once you're back, I will promote you and not mistreat you nor your men." Lin Xian heard Yue Zhong's promise, and his heart felt warm. "Your subordinate will definitely wipe out the rebels for your majesty." Yue Zhong slightly nodded as he turned his gaze towards the Shueluo 20 forts, his eyebrows furrowing. "Please hang in there." Right now, in front of the first fort, the ground had multiple holes and ditches all over it, with the blood of various species and races. The stench of the corpses was extremely overpowering, as many blood-sucking bees buzzed around the corpses, absorbing the blood of the fallen. On the fort itself, the city wall had traces of destroyed automatic weapons, while maintenance workers were silently dragging the bodies of their enemies as well as their fallen corpses off to be burned. Zhong Yan was standing on the city wall, staring at the corpses of his subordinates, and felt his heart ache. His gaze traveled towards the other parts of the city walls. Soldiers were hugging their weapons as they crouched or kneeled on the ground, sleeping. They had not had any rest for 2 whole days, their exhaustion reaching a peak. It was already the 15th day of the assault by the Dino race. Under their relentless assault and the throwing of their vassal forces at the city wall, the vast majority of the automatic defenses had already been destroyed. The mech fighters were also injured and damaged somewhat. Zhong Yan continued to rotate the soldiers, deploying his troops as efficiently as he could, fending off the constant attacks and waves from the Dino races. In this 15 days, there had been over 1 million foreign races that died in front of the first fort. Due to the overwhelming number of corpses which had formed piles and piles, Zhong Yan had no choice but to utilize the energy bombs to obliterate them. Furthermore, the presence of the corpses would be a food source for the Dino races. Each time they attacked, there would be many hungered races and tamed mutant beasts that pounced on the corpses and fed while they attacked. All of a sudden, there was a loud roar from the distance, while the blood-sucking bees scattered and flew into the skies, leaving behind a number of dried corpses. "They're coming." Zhong Yan looked at the cloud of bees and frowned. He knew that every time the bees flew, the Dino warriors would attack again. From the army camps of the Dino warriors, there was a surge of snake warriors covered in black scales. The snake warriors were also being fueled by the war drums, making a mad rush for the first fort. In the skies, 500 sparrow warriors of about 1.23 m each, wielding bows, soared up to the skies and fired multiple arrows at the human warriors on top of the fort. Zhong Yan saw the surge of enemies and had 2,000 men prepare for battle. At the same time, a number of energy cannons fired out, obliterating huge numbers of the snake warriors with each round. The rounds from the energy cannons came down like rain, annihilating many snake warriors. However, many of the snake warriors managed to pass through the fire net, getting near the city wall. The snake warriors that got past managed to get to the city wall and began to scale up the wall. After so many days of intense battles, the automatic weapons had already been destroyed. Many of the human warriors had to risk their lives to stick their heads out to shoot at the snake warriors. Since the humans had the advantage of the high ground, many snake warriors were pierced through by the laser beams. However, in retaliation, the snake warriors were able to fire out some black, poisonous arrows from their jaws. When those black poison arrows touched the faces of the human warriors, the strong corrosive ability managed to burn right through the meat and bone, causing the entire heads of the unfortunate warriors to melt. At the same time, hidden within the midst of the snake warriors, there was a Type 5 warrior that scurried up the walls. When it appeared in front of the defense points, it shot out poisonous spit. The powerful firepower stopped immediately as the warriors screamed out while being melted into a puddle. It was at the moment where the automatic weapons had been destroyed that the top experts could display their full strength. The Type 5 snake warrior continued to slither around, firing multiple poisonous veils of mist. The human warriors within the defense points were reduced to piles of bones, with no one being able to withstand the attacks. Faced with the attack of the expert snake warriors, the human casualties were rising. At the same time, the collapse of each defense point meant that the snake warriors behind were free to advance. Zhong Yan saw the peak experts of the snake warriors proceeding unbridled and decided to pull out his trump card. Iron Blood Warriors. Move out. 40 elite warriors wearing Type 4 battle suits, emitting intense killing intent, walked out, their battle spears and mutant nuclei glowing brightly. Their power was pushed to the Type 5 realm as they charged to face the snake warriors. The battle suits lit up and the Iron Blood Warriors began to run up the wall as though they were on flat land. Chapter 909. Iron Blood Warriors. Chapter 909. Iron Blood Warriors. The Type 4 snake warriors saw the sudden appearance of the 40 Iron Blood Warriors and opened their mouths, firing poisonous liquids at the Iron Blood warriors. Two of the Iron Blood warriors slashed out, activating their psychic abilities, causing the trajectory of the poison liquids to shift. The rest of the Iron Blood warriors appeared in front of the Type 4 snake warriors like lightning bolts, their spears thrusting out with tyrannical strength, directly killing a number of them. These Iron Blood warriors were the elite of the elite, each one of them soldiers that had crawled out from mountains of corpses. They all had strength at the peak of Type 4, and adding on the enhancement of their Type 4 battlesuits, they were able to unleash a Type 5 strength. This was the trump card that the first fort had kept hidden, meant to deal with any enemy experts. Without these Iron Blood warriors, then under the circumstances where the automatic weapons were all destroyed, the Type 5 foreign races would be invincible. The Type 5 Snake Warrior expert caught sight of the Iron Blood warriors, its pupils narrowing. With a flash of its body, it quickly slithered towards one of them, slashing out viciously. At that instant, the Snake Warrior's claws tore through the Type 4 battlesuit, piercing the chest plate of the Iron Blood warrior. The eyes of the Iron Blood warrior flashed with despair as he roared with rage. His both hands grabbed the hand of the Type 5 Snake Warrior firmly, locking him in place. The Type 5 Snake Warrior sneered, and his left claw slapped towards the head of the Iron Blood warrior. He just had to crush the head of this insignificant human in front of him, and he would gain his freedom. Right at this time, without any noise, two Iron Blood warriors suddenly appeared behind the Type 5 Snake Warrior, their battle spears thrusting at him. Due to the sudden turn of events, the Type 5 Snake Warrior had no way of dodging. He stared wide-eyed as the two battle spears penetrated his body, and the powerful energy blasted forth, tearing his body into pieces. This Type 5 Snake Warrior that had killed over 100 soldiers had died at the hands of the Iron Blood warriors. With his dead, the Iron Blood warrior that had used his own body to lock the Snake Warrior turned darker, his entire body slumping down without energy. Another Iron Blood warrior rushed up to support him, asking worriedly, "Ah Sheng, how is it?" The poisoned Iron Blood warrior muttered with difficulty, "I think it's too late for me. Take my equipment. Save it for one of our brothers. Watch out!" At that moment, the alarmed shout of another of their comrades rang out. A powerful bolt of energy that seemed to pierce right through the heavens shot towards them. It pierced the two Iron Blood warriors before exploding on the wall of the first fort. Countless debris fell while the two Iron Blood warriors had been blasted apart. There was a huge hole in the fort wall itself, as well as if a missile had exploded right in the middle of it. Zheng Yin, he saw the state of destruction, having lost his two Iron Blood warriors in the blink of an eye, and he roared out, "Type 6 Divine Warrior, activate the energy shield." The moment his words came out, another flurry of arrows shot out with terrifying speed, instantly shredding 6 Iron Blood warriors. Those Iron Blood warriors used all their strength and might, but in the face of pure strength, they were still weak. Soon, a huge energy shield appeared in the sky, covering the entire area of 20 m beyond the Shui Luo forts. The powerful arrows that had casually destroyed a few Type 5 Divine Warriors slammed into the shield, causing powerful waves that rippled out, yet unable to pierce through. The hundreds and thousands of Snake Warriors were also left outside the barrier, and they began a frenzied assault on the energy shield, wearing down the energy reserves. The remaining 32 Iron Blood warriors continued to fight back, supported by the other soldiers, as they dealt with those Snake Warriors that were caught within the shield. The moment those 32 Iron Blood warriors joined in the fray, and the Snake Warriors near the fort wall were quickly exterminated. After wiping out those Snake Warriors, the 32 Iron Blood warriors retreated back into the fort swiftly, while the energy shield disappeared. The countless Snake Warriors caught beyond the shield surged forward once more, and both sides began another intense round. At the same time, the energy cannons adjusted their aims, and with bright flashes, volleys of energy missiles were fired at the direction where the powerful arrows of the Type 6 Divine Warrior came from. As the rounds landed, the entire region was engulfed in bright flashes of explosions. After a few rounds, the energy cannons had no choice but to adjust their aim once more to deal with those snake warriors. There were too many of threatening to break in, and the energy cannons instantly obliterated many of them. Agu Ya was currently on a high ground, eyeing the Shueluo fort from a distance of 10 kilometers, and he gave a cold order. The Shueluo guards are all activated. Seems like the first fort is at its limit. Agu Ya, go take some experts and give them the final push. One mid-grade, Dino-General replied solemnly, "Yes, my liege." After that, Agu Ya disappeared from his location. Soon, a force of about 15 mid-grade Dino-Generals, 30 Type 5 experts of various races, 200 low-grade Dino-Generals, and 600 Type 4 experts of their vassal forces charged towards the first Shueluo fort, ignoring the snake warriors in front of them. Under the countless bombardment of the energy missiles, one Type 5 expert, as well as dozens of low-grade Dino-Generals and Type 4 experts from the vassal forces were wiped out. The rest of the experts charged through the crowd and made it to the wall successfully. A large number of automatic weapons were destroyed, and the first fort was no longer able to resist the enemy charges or prevent them from invading the 300m region near their walls. The experts of the vassal forces quickly exhibited their terrifying power, leaping up the wall and scaling it swiftly. Zhang Yanhe's response was quite timely. As the moment the experts of the vassal forces showed their abilities, a huge energy shield appeared once more, cutting off the support from behind. 500 Iron Blood warriors with Type 3 battlesuits charged out under the lead of the original 32 Iron Blood warriors, rushing at the vassal forces. The leader of the force, Agu Ya, had a ferocious glint in his eyes. With a tap of his foot, his entire body seemed to shoot towards one of the Type 4 Iron Blood warriors. He brought his fist towards the head of the warrior, instantly blasting it apart. Two other Type 4 Iron Blood warriors suddenly appeared beside Ya and were met with two insanely fast fists. Their heads were thus blasted apart as well. Agu Ya's strength at the peak of the Type 5 realm was incredibly terrifying. Even some Type 6 Divine warriors who were not proficient in close combat had died at his hands before. Even if the Iron Blood warriors were enhanced by their battle suits, they were not a match for someone like Agu Ya. After he killed 3 Type 4 Iron Blood warriors with ease, his eyes turned bloodshot, his aura terrifying. The next moment, he appeared within the 500 Iron Blood warriors, and without stopping, he punched out, causing each one of them to explode in a pillar of blood. No one was a match for him. A Type 5 Dino warrior is truly terrifying. In a command center, Zhang Yan saw how his 500 Iron Blood warriors were being slaughtered by those foreign races. His eyes flashed with pain, as though he had turned older by a few years. He gritted his teeth and ordered 67 B-54 sectors to self-detonate. Laser vehicles, encompassing fire now. Home. With his order, the region where the Iron Blood warriors were engaged in battle blew up in an earth-shaking explosion, and the blast consumed everything around it, including the various Type 5 experts. The numerous enhanced vehicles hidden within the fort rolled out, firing without stop at the city wall, killing those foreign races that had survived the earlier detonations. "I'm sorry. Forgive me." Zhang Yan eyed the city wall, his eyes filled with pain and reluctance. In order to wipe out those Dino warriors, he had no choice but to sacrifice his 500 Iron Blood warriors. When he gave the order, his heart felt as though it was crushed. After all, those troops had been trained and nurtured by him. However, he had no choice but to this. There were too little experts among the human forces. If there were no sacrifices, just an expert troop of the enemy was able to wipe out every single human within the fort. Su Jian, Zhang Yanhe's vice commander, stepped up and offered his consolations. "General, don't blame yourself. Since the day they chose to become Iron Blood warriors, they have expected such a fate. To die on the battlefield defending their fellow humans, it is the highest honor that they can receive. They are all heroes and will forever be remembered in our hearts. They are all heroes. Zheng Yanhe's eyes turned misty and a look of guilt and self-reproach flashed past, before it turned to resolution. Su Jian, command the rest to retreat to the second fort. Su Jian could not help but exclaim, General, our energy shield is not yet destroyed. Are we going to just give up on the first fort? Although they had held out for 15 days, under Zhang Yanhe's insightful tactics, the energy shield had not yet been breached, with over 40% power reserve. Chapter 9-10. The Fall of the First Fort. Chapter 9-10. The Fall of the First Fort. Zhang Yanhe's tone turned solemn. We have fought for so long. Our soldiers are already tired. Even if we have enough equipment to support another 2 days, under such circumstances, we will only suffer. We need to let them retreat and have a good rest. From the time the Dino army launched their attack, the death toll had been steadily rising. In the first 10 days, the first fort had only lost not more than 100 men. However, once the automated defenses were destroyed, the soldiers had no chance to rest, and their casualty rate was climbing. Just yesterday, they had already lost 1,300 soldiers. Furthermore, the battle today had not gone on for long, but 500 elite Iron Blood warriors were already killed in action. Such a loss was too hard for Zheng Yanhe to bear. It was especially so for those soldiers sent from the other forts as reinforcements. Many of them could not compare to the elites of the first fort. The few days of intense combat was already reaching their threshold. If they were to continue like that, it was likely that they would collapse. Su Jian saluted before leaving quietly. Understood. Soon, behind the first fort, many soldiers with exhaustion written all over their faces could be seen retreating towards the second fort. Many of the soldiers from the first fort eyed this structure they had called home for numerous months and years with hot tears flowing down their faces. They had fought and defended it with all their might, and were clear that this time, it was truly goodbye. There was no way of returning to this place that they were proud of. In order to eliminate most of the Type 5 experts, the first fort was buried with energy bombs. Although they had successfully wiped out this batch of Type 5 experts, the resulting explosions had also caused a huge hole in the fort. Seeing such a huge hole in the fort wall, many soldiers of the foreign races and species surged forward. The human's physique was vastly inferior to these races. The moment the enemy got close to them, the human soldiers would definitely die. Just as the hundreds of enemy soldiers charged through the hole, a number of laser beams shot out from nowhere. The hundreds of soldiers were instantly turned to sliced meat. Even so, many more continued to pour in through the hole, before being shredded apart by the automatic laser vehicles already waiting behind the wall. Zheng Yanhe had already expected that the explosion would damage the wall, and thus, he had made the necessary preparations as well. Following the mass evacuation of the soldiers, the defense of the first fort became much more simple. Right at this time, the 2,000 mech fighters that Zheng Yanhe had kept from the battle finally joined in the fray. The moment they stepped in, although it was insufficient to turn the tides, it was enough to buy time for the human soldiers to retreat. From afar, Agu Ya caught sight of the mech fighters taking over the positions of the humans, and his eyes turned sharp. Seems like Zheng Yanhe is retreating. One mid-grade, Dino-General asked, My liege, shall we increase the attack? Agu Ya spoke slowly. No matter. It would just benefit Zheng Yanhe. These crafty humans definitely planted bombs within the first fort. The more we send, when the defenses fall, the more we will lose. If they were not concerned about the energy bombs beneath the first fort, the Type 6 Divine Warriors of the Tyranno Kingdom would have long charged in. Out here on the battlefield, a Type 6 Divine Warrior was incredibly powerful with almost no opponent. As long as they made it up the fort, they would be able to slaughter every single soldier without a sweat. Initially, the first fort had been assaulted by such a Tyranno King before. However, after he had breached the fort, he was taken out by the energy bombs buried. In this third world, every single Type 6 Divine Warrior was a peak existence, other than the Dino race being the land rulers, as well as the Sea Clan within the waters. The number of Type 6 experts in most other races never exceeded 10. The loss of a Type 6 Tyranno King was a huge blow to the kingdom. At that time, there had only been 5 Type 6 Tyranno Kings. After losing one, they had no choice but to stop the assault on the Luo forts. After all, there were 20 of them. Without the Type 6 experts to act, it was hard to take down each one. The intense siege continued for over half a day before the 2,000 mech fighters were finally ripped apart by the huge number of enemy forces. The frames of these mech fighters were not exceptional. A Type 2 Divine Warrior would be able to smash them apart. After destroying the 2,000 mech fighters, the foreign races poured through the first fort, destroying every single piece of equipment they laid their hands on. At the same time, many of the vassal forces sent out sniffers to dig out the buried energy bombs. On top of that, 2,000 lizard warriors charged right out, chasing after the retreating human soldiers. The other vassal forces that were treated as cannon fodder also rushed after the human soldiers. These fellows are truly getting crafty. From a far distance away, Zhang Yin, he saw all that was happening in the first fort through a surveillance camera and sighed before pressing a remote control. Following a loud, earth-shaking explosion, the entire first fort was engulfed in a bright, white light. The terrifying explosion instantly consumed every single living thing in the vicinity, wiping out all 20,000 soldiers of the Dino army. The dust blew and rose up in a cloud. The ground trembled, and it could be felt even from miles away. At the moment of the explosion, a powerful shock wave shot out in all directions, wiping out all the mouse warriors that were nearby. They started crumpling to the ground while bleeding from their orifices. All the foreign races were in shock when they witnessed what had happened in the first fort. Even a Type 7 Divine Warrior would have fallen at the center of that explosion. When the dust settled, there was a huge crater in the ground, and the entire first fort was obliterated from existence. Agu Ya eyed that huge crater and ordered coldly, "Continue the attack." Instantly, countless soldiers charged out from the forests, dashing through where the first fort used to be as they made their way towards the second fort. This time, the numbers behind the assault on Cloud Region was simply unimaginable. With other dozens of Dino Kings gathering, it was hard to tell how powerful they were all capable of unleashing. The deaths of the cannon fodder and vassal forces did not mean much to these Dino Kings. Instead, their deaths were a good thing to the Tyranno Kingdom. This would wear down on any resistance the vassal forces might be inclined to put up. Although they were vassals, in the eyes of the Dino warriors, they were just cannon fodder. Even if an entire species were to be wiped out, the Dino warriors would just find others. Soon, a similar scene of battle started to appear at the second fort. Many of the enemy forces used their own lives and flesh and blood to destroy the automated weapons. The second fort was also a tough nut to crack, covered with countless defenses and automatic weapons. Many soldiers of the foreign races perished right in front of the iron fortress. Due to the terrain, the structure of the second fort was smaller than the first fort. At the same time, most of the resources through the years had been pumped into the first fort. Therefore, the strength of the defense of the second fort was weaker. However, it was also due to the terrain that the enemy forces could not spread out and could only surge forward, only to be obliterated by the defenses. Under the frenzied assault of the foreign races, after another 7 days, as well as the sacrifice of over 500,000 foot soldiers, Zhang Yin, he and Wu Bao had no choice but to give up on the second fort and retreat further into the third fort. The defenses of the third fort were worse than the second. This time, the enemy only had to pay the price of 300,000 soldiers in a period of 5 days before taking it down. The Dino army and its vassal forces had managed to take down 3 forts successively, gaining huge momentum. While the people within the Luo forts began to panic, and their morale dropped even further. It must be known that after the 20 forts were constructed, other than the first fort that had been constantly fending off attacks, the rest of the forts had never been besieged before. Within a month's time, the 3 strongest forts had been crushed by the march of the Dino army, giving a taste of the true might of their strength and terror. The scary thing was that all the forces that had been attacking right now were the vassal forces. The actual Dino army had not yet made a move. Thinking about this, the soldiers within the Shui Luo forts could not help but tremble. Under such immense pressure, the other generals had no choice and submitted their resignation to Han Xiong. Chapter 9:11. Yue Zhong arrives. Chapter 9:11. Yue Zhong arrives. If it were in normal peace times, if the 6 generals were to tender their resignation, Han Xiong would definitely be overjoyed. It would allow Yue Zhong to put his trusted aides into the armies. However, at this critical moment, the resignation of the 6 of them caused Han Xiong to be vexed. However, after clarifying with Yue Zhong, she relented. If they were forced to stay, who knew what they might do during a crisis? It would be better to let those without the will to fight leave. Due to their departure, it caused a wave among their subordinates, and many commanders who were not willing to risk their lives immediately followed their example. If it were Wei Ming-Qing, these people would not have dared to be this audacious. However, since they had just recently pledged themselves to Yue Zhong, their loyalty was not set in stone yet. Yue Zhong was helpless, but he had to let them leave. Due to the sudden departure of so many military commanders, many people within the forts were shaken. It was at this moment that Han Xiong swiftly inserted the people she brought over from the storm battleship into the armies. These commanders from the storm battleship were all slaves in the past. In order to change their lives, they had fought with all their might, unafraid of death. They even had an intimidating aura. With the appointment of these commanders, the soldiers slowly began to settle down. When the troops were reorganized, Han Xiong followed Yue Zhong's orders and deployed them units by units to the front line. In this Shui Luo 20 forts, only the 1st to 3rd forts had experience battling against the other races. The rest of the forts would frequently send their soldiers out for experience as well, but compared to the 1st to 3rd forts, they were truly lacking. Thus, they could not compare to the elites of the first 3 forts. Even so, they were placed under training every day, familiarizing themselves with the various equipment and weapons. When Zheng Yin received the reinforcement troops from Han Xiong, he heaved a sigh of relief. He then sent his direct subordinates back to Han Xiong, firstly as a means of rest for them. Second, it was to express his intentions for Han Xiong to hold them as hostages if she so wished. He had been unwilling to take part in the conflict between men. Thus, he did not accept Yue Zhong's offer to join him. He had always been about the big picture, and he knew that it was a time where they all had to cooperate. Without Yue Zhong's support, he and his soldiers would have died long ago. That was why he delivered his own troops over to Han Xiong, expressing his subservience. In response, Yue Zhong threw even more into support, ordering Han Xiong to push even more logistics and reinforcements to the front lines. At the same time, the various production facilities were working overtime, repairing and building new automatic defense equipment in preparation for the big battle. The defense of the first fort had been astonishing. According to the estimates of the upper echelons of Cloud Region, they had thought that it would take 1 million soldiers to break through it. 1 million soldiers was a huge number to the Tyranno Kingdom with a naturally small occurring population. After paying a huge price, they would then have no more energy or power to push through the second fort. Hence, although the rest of the forts had their own self-defense systems, they were incomparable to the importance of the first to third. Zheng Yin now had ample forces. However, against the frenzied foreign races, the defenses of the other forts were not as powerful as the March 1st. Hence, the subsequent forts were being taken down in succession. Each fort could only hold out for 3 days. There were some which could barely last a day before being breached. After 25 days, the Shui Luo forts, termed as infallible, had been largely destroyed, leaving behind the last and final 20th fort. On the 25th day of battle, the foreign armies had lost 2 million soldiers, covering over 10 li, where numerous corpses could be seen along the way. The fresh blood had already dyed the entire plains a dark red. As for the humans, Zheng Yin had given his all to command the battle, yet he had already lost 20,000 human soldiers. The destroyed mech fighters had reached 30,000. In front of the 20th fort, a large number of boar warriors were now surging towards the city wall. The boar warriors and pig warriors had a strong breeding ability. Thus, they were the favorite cannon fodders of the Dino races. In the skies, some hundreds of cardinal warriors soared, attracting the firepower from the fort. The human soldiers on the city wall wielded their weapons and fired them alongside the automatic defenses of the enemy troops. In the past battles, Zhong Yin, he had tried to protect the human soldiers as much as he could. Thus, he would seldom deploy the soldiers to fight. However, the situation was different now. The 20th fort was the final stand. They had no way of retreat. In order to defend the place, he had no choice but to activate the human troops. The benefit of having human soldiers at the onset of battle was that they could help prevent the damage to their automated defenses. The disadvantage was that the casualty rate would then climb faster. The humans and the vassal forces of the Dino army clashed against each other. It was incredibly violent, with numerous soldiers losing their lives. In a secret basement of the 20th fort, the various commanders were in a meeting. Ma Lei spoke. What do we do? Seems like it's hard to defend the 20th fort. I think we should prepare to retreat now and conserve some troops for leader. The 20th fort had a tight defense as well as automated defenses. Even with 160,000 elites on standby, as well as the most advanced technologies, no one had the confidence to say that they could hold out. This was because they had seen for themselves the terror of the Dino army's vassal forces. Under the relentless counterattack by the soldiers in the past 19 forts, there were already over 3 million of the enemy forces wiped out. And yet, they were still coming, as though there was no end to them. The ferocity of the siege caused a chill even in the sturdiest of hearts. What was most demoralizing was that, other than some rare moments where the Dino warriors would make a move, for the most part of this assault, the Dino army had not yet made a move. They were watching the battle coldly, and that sort of pressure was extremely despairing. Han Xiong's face turned cold. This is already the last stand for the humans. How can we retreat? If we retreat, that would mean allowing those demons in a cloud region. It would become a hunting ground for them here. The 20th fort was the final form of defense for the human population in Cloud Region. Once this was breached, all of Cloud Region would be exposed to the enemy. In the hundreds of years, the human population had dumped a lot of resources into the 20 forts and the construction of the palace. It was due to this investment that the 19 forts could eradicate over 3 million enemies. Inside Cloud Region, the defenses of the cities were considerably weaker. 2,000 ordinary Dino warriors could easily wipe out a city that had 200,000 humans. If they allowed the Dino warriors to enter Cloud Region, it would be a calamity. Ma Lei continued stubbornly. I feel that we should conserve our strength. Cloud Region is so vast. If we retreat, the Dino army definitely has to scatter. We can then make use of the advantage in terrain to wipe them out in skirmishes. If we stand guard here, once the fort is breached, there will not be any forces to stand against them. Furthermore, our strength is almost spent here. Leader does not have our support at all. He must be having it tough. Ma Lei quickly added that sentence, before turning to Xiao Yun, who had been silent, asking, Xiao Yun, what do you think? Ma Lei, Xiao Yun, Han Xiong, Sun Lan Lan were the most important 4 subordinates under Yue Zhong. Xiao Yun frowned and spoke out. I feel we should consult leader. If he wants us to defend, we will defend. If he wants us to retreat, we will retreat. Ma Lei furrowed his brows and sighed inwardly. He had hoped to retreat, then report to Yue Zhong. At that time, he had hoped that by conserving some troops for Yue Zhong, he would not blame him. Han Xiong nodded. Fine. I'll report to Leader Yue Zhong. There's no need. I'm here. At this moment, the door opened, and Yue Zhong walked in. Leader, following surprised and excited cheers, all the commanders stood up in the room, looking at Yue Zhong with gazes of joy. Yue Zhong declared firmly, we shall stand our ground for 20 days. We need to guard here and not retreat in these 20 days. All of them immediately replied in unison, Yes, sir. Ma Lei immediately asked after, Leader, Why 20 days before retreating? Yue Zhong responded, because it will take 20 days for all the humans in Cloud Region to escape from here. In these 20 days, we must guard here with all our lives, and not allow the fort to fall. When the 20 forts had been besieged, Yue Zhong had not stopped working, immediately setting plans for the humans from Cloud Region to migrate over to the Second World. Due to the vast size of Cloud Region, while Yue Zhong's orders were being carried out, it would still take some time to evacuate all the humans throughout the region. 20 days was the absolute limit. Chapter 912. The Objective of the Type 7 Dino-Emperor. Chapter 912. The Objective of the Type 7 Dino-Emperor. Above the 20th fort, Zhang Yin, he was in a command center, watching the intense battle below, his eyes bloodshot. The Dino warriors had pushed the vassal forces to attack constantly without rest, while Zhang Yin, he had been commanding the battle without resting himself. Although he was a Type 5 divine warrior, after so many days, even he was exhausted. However, he stood firm on the front line to command. After these few days, everyone had to admit that Zhang Yin, he was truly an ingenious commander of defense. With his impeccable timing and strategic commands, they had been able to hold out for so long. The fall of the 19 forts was not because Zhang Yin, he was not capable, but the enemies were too overbearing. This time, it was a battle against the overlords of the land with an unending number of soldiers. If it was not for the mech fighters being utilized, the 200,000 human soldiers would have long been wiped out. Leader Yue Zhong is here. Leader Yue Zhong. All of a sudden, cheers erupted from the human crowd. Yue Zhong. When Zhang Yin, he heard this name, his eyebrows arched, and he turned towards the source of the commotion. He discovered a young man walking over, guarded by 20 Type 4 experts. Zhang Yin, he turned to the 2 Type 5 experts besides him, Wu Bao and Wei Wu, saying, Old Wu, old Wei, let's go over. Wu Bao and Wu Wei might not surpass Zhang Yin, he in terms of combat ability, but they were still peak experts. They wore Type 5 battle suits, so that they can charge into joining the fray anytime they were required. Wu Bao and Wei Wu both looked towards Yue Zhong with complicated gleams, before nodding and following Zhang Yin he. Zhang Yin he eyed Yue Zhong, bowing respectfully. Emperor Yue Zhong, I did not perform my duties properly and am guilty of this heavy offense. I plead for your mercy. He knew that Yue Zhong held their lives and deaths in his palm now. If Yue Zhong were to revoke their military authority, they had no way of contesting it either. When he thought of how he had refused Yue Zhong previously, his heart sank. Should Yue Zhong be a narrow-minded person, then he would likely just kill them. It did not matter if he died. However, he did not want the 20th fort to be conquered due to his death. That would result in the bloodshed of the entire Cloud region. Wu Bao and Wei Wu also stepped forward to bow. Wu Bao, Wei Wu, begs for your majesty's mercy. Yue Zhong hurried to support them up, his face serious. What offenses are you guys guilty of? If it wasn't for the effort of you generals, the 20 forts would have long since fallen. I'm still hoping for the 3 of you to continue and aid me in defending the Cloud region. You're the last hope for our humankind. Zhang Yin, his heart relaxed, as he swore a promise to Yue Zhong. Thank you, your majesty. Your subordinate will definitely defend this fort until my death. As long as the fort stands, I will stay. If the fort falls, I shall die together with it. Yue Zhong continued, let Zhang Yin he handle this. I brought 20,000 mech fighters with me, 250,000 engineering robots, 100 energy cannons, 100 heavy assault helicopters, 80 Reapers, 300 laser gun-mounted vehicles, 1,000 heavy tanks, as well as 2,000 city guards. With such a force, are you able to hold out for 20 days? This time, Yue Zhong had sent out a large number of equipment and weapons to the 20th fort, preparing for this crucial battle. In this battle, Yue Zhong was clear that with the present strength of the humans in Cloud region, they will definitely fail. However, he hopes to borrow the 20 forts to wear down the vassal forces, buying more time for the humans of Cloud region. Zhang Yin, he was moved as he responded, your subordinate will guard this place for the next 20 days. The might of the armored unit that Yue Zhong brought was astonishing. If it were unleashed in Cloud Region, no single faction would be able to defend themselves. The fact that Yue Zhong was dedicating so many resources to the fort's defenses caused Zhong Yanhe to be moved. Yue Zhong then saluted Zhong Yanhe and spoke. Then I'll hand over the command to you. I will be on the front lines as a soldier. It's up to you now. He knew that his experience in commanding troops was not sufficient. At the same time, he was not well versed in the fort defenses. As the matter concerned the lives and deaths of over 180,000 human soldiers, he chose to pass the authority to someone with experience. A look of shock and emotions welled up in Zhong Yanhe's eyes. Your Majesty, I will not let you down. Wu Bao and Wei Wu also had emotional looks. After all, in the past, the emperors had seldom appeared on the battlefield. And yet, Yue Zhong was already the emperor that Cloud Region recognized. He was still willing to fight on the front lines. This bolstered their emotions and morale. Yue Zhong chuckled before taking up his electromagnetic cannon and walked out. Leader Yue Zhong, it's Sir Yue Zhong. Leader Yue Zhong is about to join us in battle. His Majesty is actually fighting alongside us. Many people knew of Yue Zhong's identity and status, and instantly, the entire fort erupted in cheers. The morale shot through the roof. With Yue Zhong personally leading the front lines, it meant that Cloud Region had no plans to abandon or give up on them. Wu Bao eyed him and commented softly, seems like it's not bad that he became the new ruler of Cloud Region. Wei Wu roared out with laughter, pulling out his own electromagnetic cannon and darted forwards into the battlefield, firing at the enemy soldiers. Old Wu, we can't call him that anymore. He's the emperor now. Fighting for this emperor is truly an honor for all of Cloud Region. Seeing him, even I can't help but want to slaughter more foreign dogs. I'm heading off. In the palace of the Tyranno Kingdom, a huge shadow in the darkness suddenly opened its eyes. A bright gleam appeared, as though capable of slicing through the earth itself. It's here. He's finally appeared. That is the God and Devil imprint. He's a Type 5 Divine Warrior. Great. He must already have a God-Devil nucleus. I must kill him. He's mine. Once I absorb his strength, I can break through and become a Type 8 Divine Warrior. With that, a powerful strength burst out from the area. As the huge shadow got up, the shockwave spreading outwards. Within the capital, many experts quickly kneeled and trembled when they felt the shockwave. In one corner, Type 6 Tyranno Queen Agu, she was affected by the shockwave as well. Her face turned pale as she trembled slightly, as though she could not move. Strong. Is it the might of the Type 7 Dino-Emperor? He's truly terrifying. Just the pressure was enough to suppress 30% of my strength. Fearsome. A powerful sound reverberated across the entire kingdom. Convey my orders. Everyone is to charge for the fort. At the next moment, there was a loud explosion as a huge hole appeared in the palace, while a dark light shot out from within, traveling towards the distance. Agu, she glanced at the speed of the black shadow in the skies, her eyes flashing with envy. The Type 7 Dino-Emperor already possesses the ability to control the energy of heaven and earth. Even if he's not a wing type, he can already travel through the air. The legends were true, it seems. Once we evolve to the Type 7 realm, we'll not be bound to the land. As a Type 6 Tyranno King, Agu, she was already near invincible. No one was a match for her. However, she had one regret, which was that she could not fly. Each time she came across an airborne enemy, she could only watch them fly away. With the orders of the Type 7 Dino-Emperor, the majority of the Dino army forces began to launch an assault towards the direction of the Shueluo fort. From the skies, the countless Dino warriors were like ants, a line that stretched for over 100 li as they made for the fort. Most of the Dino races were warriors. It was just an issue of how strong they were. Most of the weaker male Dino warriors were at least at the Type 3 stage, while the female ones might not necessarily be stronger, but made up for it with their viciousness and ferocity. It was because of their savage nature that everyone was a warrior, and thus they could all fight and completely suppress humankind, preventing the technologically advanced humans from stepping out of Cloud region. At the same time, they did not mind cannibalism in times of hunger. They were willing to consume the corpses of their comrades. With their various vassal forces, there was the support of rations, as well as the nourishment of the blood honey. This was how their back-end support was much solid compared to the humans. On the 20th fort, Yue Zhong was firing constantly with his electromagnetic cannon, easily blasting off the heads of over 20 Boer warriors in the span of a breath. All of a sudden, his brows furrowed as he felt an impending sense of crisis. What's going on? Why do I feel like something bad's about to happen? He looked towards the distance and could not tell the source of his rising sense of unease. Chapter 9:13 Coercion. Chapter 9:13 Coercion. After 2 days, the entire area in front of the 20th fort was littered with the corpses of the foreign races. Many of these soldiers had not even matured and were already thrown into battle, dying miserably in front of the fort. For the sake of this war, the dozens of Dino kingdoms had activated their vassal forces, throwing them all into the fight. Just the numbers that had reached the battlefield alone already reached more than 5 million. Right now, along the way towards the 20th fort, there were piles and heaps of corpses and dismembered limbs. 300 type 4 mutant beasts, a vast number of pterosaurs, velociraptors, as well other mutant beasts were devouring these corpses. These vassal forces were the best mobile rations after their deaths. Not only would consumption go down, their blood could be collected to become blood honey, while their corpses could become food for the other mutant beasts behind them. When the members of the vassal forces saw such a cruel scene, their faces were pale, yet they did not dare to say anything. Their strength was too weak compared to the Tyranno kingdom. Furthermore, these vassal forces did not have the technology nor the forts as defenses. If they betrayed the Tyranno kingdom, there was only death for them. A single Type 6 Tyranno king was enough to wipe out an entire race. Far away from the fort, Agu Ya stared at the black lizard warrior corpses from the laser beams. No change in expression. Beside him, the rest of the black lizard warriors were pale, their eyes filled with pain. They were an elite troop, and yet, barely after a day, they had already lost 20,000 of their people. The humans, on the other hand, suffered little casualties. However, Agu Ya did not give the command to retreat, and the black lizard warriors did not dare say anything. Agu Ya eyed the 20th fort, his eyes flashing with heat. We have lost another 400,000 soldiers in these 2 days. We still have 6 million troops. This assault can continue for 8 days. By then, the reinforcements will arrive. This last stand of the humans will definitely fall this time. The Yue Luo 20 forts had withstood the attacks of the Tyranno kingdom for years. If it wasn't for them, with the strength of the kingdom, all the humans in Cloud region would have been slaughtered. All of a sudden, a black shadow shot through the skies like a shooting star, landing in the Dino army camp. A powerful aura gushed out, enveloping the entire area. Under the pressure of that terrifying aura, everyone present within the camp trembled. It's His Majesty, Emperor Ba Long. Agu Ya was shocked and immediately brought all his mid-grade Dino-Generals, as well as the Type 5 experts, to the center of the camp. We greet your Majesty, Emperor Ba Long. Agu Ya got down on one knee, declaring with reverence, We greet your Majesty, Emperor Ba Long. The rest of the subjects also got down on their knees, enveloped by that overwhelming pressure. They did not dare to even look up as they welcomed him with fear and respect. Emperor Ba Long ordered coldly, Get up. Agu Ya, I want you to disregard everything and take down that 20th fort within 7 days. Agu Ya was shocked as he exclaimed, Your Majesty, why the hurry? With our strength, we will just need a month at most. We will be able to take down the Yue Luo fort. We will not suffer so many casualties as well. If we have to throw all we have within the 7 days, we will lose many of our elites. The Dino warriors were making use of the vassals as cannon fodder, as well as a means to chip away at the defenses of the humans. Like this, they would not lose their own elites. If they had to take down the last fort within the next 7 days, he would have to deploy the elites of the Dino warriors. They would be able to take down the fort, but at a high cost. Are you questioning my order? Following that icy tone, a powerful killing intent erupted and enveloped Agu Ya, while Emperor Balong's gaze fell upon Agu Ya like swords. Agu Ya immediately replied with his back in cold sweat when he sensed that killing intent. No, your subject does not dare. A Type 7 Dino-Emperor was very different from a Type 6 Dino-King. Among the Dino warriors, the Type 7 Dino-Emperor was a godlike existence. If Emperor Balong gave the order to kill Agu Ya on the spot, no one would stand up for him. Emperor Balong declared coldly, "Good. You shall lead the charge and atone for your sins. If you can bring the person with the gold imprint in front of me, I will help you become a Type 7 Divine Warrior. After hundreds of years, you will become like us." The cold sweat behind Agu Ya finally stopped, as he gritted his teeth to reply, "Yes, Your Majesty." Agu Ya was extremely clear that if he failed to deliver within 7 days, all that awaited him was death. After leaving the central camp, Agu Ya turned to the leaders of the vassal forces, speaking coldly. "You heard it. Within 7 days, if we don't take down the Shui Luo fort, and you guys are still alive, then your race will all be annihilated." One of the Tiger warriors replied solemnly, "Understood. We will definitely give it our all." The rest of the leaders also revealed expressions of desperation. For the sake of their own races, they had to risk it all. Under the coercion of Emperor Balong, the style of battle changed radically, becoming more intense. Foreign warriors were now surging forwards without a care for their own lives. They were no longer as dispersed as before, instead, charging at the fort in dense numbers. The energy cannons within the Shui Luo fort fired out without stopping. A number of energy bombs landed on the foreign races, blasting large zones of them into oblivion. Those that managed to make it past the explosions were then met with laser beams, turning them into sieves. Even so, the soldiers did not relent, continuing to surge forwards in droves like unending ants. In the skies, the aerial soldiers had increased by 10 times, with over thousands of airborne soldiers now assaulting the fort. The human soldiers stationed with the mech fighters were pierced by the incoming arrows as they fell in pools of their own blood. The mech fighters started to break apart in explosions, where their lines and cables were destroyed, stopping all movement. Inside Shui Luo Fort, a number of anti-air laser cannons were fired out, blasting apart the winged races under the command of Bai Yi. At that moment, when all these were going on, all the Type 4 and Type 5 experts that had been biding their time suddenly attacked. One particular Type 5 blue lizard leader's body darted forwards. With a wave of his hand, countless wind blades burst out from a distance of 5 kilometers, slicing at the fort. Due to those wind blades, a number of self-defense mechanisms were wrecked. 16M, tall Type 5 bear warrior roared out in fury, raising a huge boulder of hundreds of tons. He swung it madly, sending it soaring towards the fort like a shooting star. Faced with that attack, a number of guided energy missiles shot out to slam into the boulder, blasting it apart. One Type 5 eagle warrior who had sharp eyes soared into the skies. He raised his bow and fixed his aim upon the various fire points atop the city wall and began firing non-stop. Within one bunker, there were 2 human soldiers stationed inside, controlling an electromagnetic cannon to fire at the foreign races below. Suddenly, an arrow burst down into the bunker, directly piercing the cannon. At the next moment, 2 other arrows shot right into the skulls of those 2 human soldiers, blood splattering everywhere. All the Type 5 experts had been mobilized since they had been conserving their strength. They were able to burst forth with ferocious intensity. However, they were now forced to slaughter these humans within a time period. Thus, they did not hold back and went all out. Other than those Type 5 experts, a number of Type 3 Diplodocuses were also flinging stones with vigor towards the fort, destroying the automatic defenses. What's going on? On top of the fort, Yue Zhong looked out at the mad rush of the foreign races, and he frowned. Although the frenzied charge of the foreign races had sped up their deaths, the defenses of the last Shuai Luo fort was also being chipped away. At the same time, due to the Type 5 experts making a move, the casualties of the human soldiers were rising. The intense and bloody battle went on for an entire hour. Under the relentless assault of the Type 5 experts from the foreign races, over 300 human soldiers had died. When Yue Zhong heard the report of the casualty rates, a dark look came over his face. No, we can't go on like this. Chapter 9:14. The Terror of a High-Grade Dino-General. Chapter 9:14. The Terror of a High-Grade Dino-General. Yue Zhong gave an order to Bai Yi, get rid of those Type 5 enhancers. If they did not take care of the Type 5 experts, the entire troop in the fort would be slowly killed, and the 180,000-strong army would not last a few days. Bai Yi's eyes turned to data and numbers, as she made some calculations. Yes. Choosing the most threatening targets automatically. All of a sudden, multiple laser beams shot out from the fort, forming a dense rain that swept into the distance. The Type 5 bear warrior that could toss the boulder of hundreds of tons quickly dashed away, retreating with explosive speed. However, in the end, he did not manage to outrun the laser beams. At the point of contact, the Type 5 bear warrior bellowed in rage as a powerful radiance of light appeared, blocking in front of him. The lasers that could pierce through armored vehicles like they were nothing slammed into radiance of light, causing ripples. However, after blocking a few hundred beams, the radiance of light collapsed. The multiple beams tore into the skin of the Type 5 bear warrior, penetrating his body, leaving it full of bloody holes. After dealing with the Type 5 bear warrior, the cluster of prism laser cannons behind the fort wall adjusted their aims under Bai Yi's control. They then began to lock onto the Type 5 green lizard warrior that could control wind blades. A large group of laser beams fired out, directly tearing through the Type 5 lizard warrior as he slumped to the ground lifelessly. The prism laser cannons then continued to take out the various Type 5 experts. However, the airborne enemy troops also attacked the prism laser cannons, taking them out one by one. These prism laser cannons were specifically used to deal with the Type 5 and Type 6 warriors. It was the reason those Type 5 experts did not dare be unbridled. The Type 5 experts of the vassal forces were being killed by the prism laser cannons consistently, while the airborne races were met with the electromagnetic cannons. In the midst of all that, the prism laser cannons were being damaged by the airborne vassal forces, their efficiency being cut down constantly. If the prism laser cannons were able to unleash their firepower without interruption, they would be able to kill a Type 5 expert in a single hit. If they were just firing blindly, it would not be as effective. The cruel battle continued for a long while without any pause. The enemy forces continued to surge forward to the fort before being reduced to corpses. Countless enemy foreign soldiers were killed in the relentless firepower. Their corpses began to pile up, forming mounds, allowing the soldiers behind to ascend them to continue the attack on the fort. In order to deal with those mounds that were quickly turning into some grotesque pathway to the top of the fort would fire out napalms from time to time. The blaze would consume the dead soldiers, reducing them to ash. About 500 m away from the fort, there could be multiple piles of charred bones, while black smoke rose everywhere, emitting a putrid stench. The area in front of the fort was like a slaughterhouse, with the frenzied and ferocious foreign races being killed. The battle waged on for an entire day. Even in the dark of the night, the foreign races continued to charge forwards without rest, assaulting the fort without any care for their own lives. Flares were shot into the sky, illuminating the night sky, and countless lasers instantly blast out at the enemy forces, eradicating another wave. This was the pattern that lasted for an entire 3 days and 3 nights, and the total number of dead foreign soldiers outside the fort numbered over 1 million. However, the assault of the foreign races was truly intense, forcing the energy cannons within the fort to fire almost without stop. Under that sort of output, the cannons began to fail. Those prism laser cannons that could instantly wipe out a Type 5 Divine Warrior were also failing, with 2/3 of them totally destroyed. Within the fort, the casualty rate of the human soldiers had reached 5,000. They had also lost 80,000 of their mech fighters. Early the next morning, a number of soldiers were walking out of their covers with faces of exhaustion, while new soldiers took over them. In a battle of life and death, it was easy to wear a person out. Even the most elite of soldiers would not be able to battle constantly without rest. In fact, most of them were lacking any semblance to their usual selves. Not only were they physically fatigued, they were mentally drained. They're here. The Dino warriors are attacking. Suddenly, there were shouts of alarm. Atop the city wall, Yue Zhong eyed the Tyranno warriors charging towards the fort at the speed of sound, his brows furrowing. The Dino warriors. Are they finally sending out their elites? This time, among the 20,000 lizard warriors, there were 4,000 Tyranno warriors mixed in. The 4,000 Tyranno warriors were charging forward with all their might, their speed reaching the sound barrier. It was like 1,000 fighter jets shooting for the fort. Facing these Tyranno warriors with terrifying speed, the soldiers within the Shuel Luo fort began to attack crazily. Although there would be some Tyranno warriors that got killed by the barrage of laser and electromagnetic beams, over thousands of them managed to get past and got close to the wall. Yue Zhong dashed forward, aiming at the Tyranno warriors with his electromagnetic cannons. His shots caused many of the Type 4 Tyranno warriors to be instantly killed by a blast to their heads. 2,000 Shuel Luo guards with their Type 3 battlesuits came up to the wall as well, firing their weapons down at the Tyranno warriors. Many of the intact self-defense weapons adjusted their aim towards the Tyranno warriors. Buffeted by the beams, many Tyranno warriors were shot full of holes. However, the combat ability of these Tyranno warriors was superior to most other Type 4 experts. With a flash of their bodies, they quickly scaled up the fort as agile as the lizard warriors. They came up to the automated defenses and crushed them with their bare hands. These Tyranno warriors were stronger than most other foreign races. As they leaped up the fort, most of the automated defense systems stood no chance. 40 low-grade Dino-Generals and 10 mid-grade Dino-Generals suddenly leaped out from the midst of the Tyranno warriors, breaching into the Shuel Luo fort. These Tyranno-Generals were incredibly vicious. The moment one of them landed among the Shuel Luo guards, he charged right into their midst, his right fist slamming into their heads. Pong, pong, pong. With loud sounds of bone cracking, the heads of those Shuel Luo guards burst apart like watermelons. The mid-grade Tyranno-Generals cut through the troops in all directions. Everywhere their blade fell, the heads of countless Shuel Luo guards would roll. Go to hell, beast! Following roars of rage, 10 Type 4 Iron-Blood warriors charged towards one mid-grade Tyranno-General with bloodshot eyes. The eyes of the mid-grade Tyranno-General flashed with a fierce glint. His body disappeared, and he reappeared outside of the encirclement. At the next moment, the heads of the 10 Type 4 Iron-Blood warriors split apart in showers of blood, while he did not even suffer the slightest bit of injury. Facing these terrifying Tyranno-Generals, more prism laser cannons rose out from the fort, firing at the Tyranno-Generals with no mercy. As the laser beams blasted out, a number of Shuel Luo guard elites that were engaged with the Tyranno-General were all killed together. It was only under such shots that did not distinguish friend or foe that could swiftly take out a Type 5 Tyranno-General. Within the barrage of laser beams, a 3M tall figure suddenly glowed with a dark energy shield. He turned into a flash of light that burst through the beams, which caused ripples in his shield, but not truly damaging him. This particular figure was the Type 6 Tyranno King Agu Ya, who had been forced to the edge. The black box in his hands was a prehistoric tech from the humans of the past that allowed the user to be covered in a powerful energy shield powered by a Type 6 nucleus. It was with this treasure that the energy shield could withstand the laser beams. In a breath's time, Agu Ya had appeared among the prism laser cannons. He pulled out a 4M large bone axe and began to unleash hell to the equipment. Crash! Shatter! With the loud sounds of destruction, many of the prism laser cannons were destroyed by Agu Ya. He did not seem to stop in his movements at all, continuing his rampage on the weapons around him. Just him alone was equivalent to the might of an entire army. One by one, the prism laser cannons were reduced to rubble quickly. The might of their attacks thus became weaker, less threatening to Agu Ya over time. On the fort, countless automated weapons appeared, aiming for Agu Ya under the control of Bai Yi. Chapter 9:15 Battling Agu Ya. Chapter 9:15 Battling Agu Ya. Agu Ya continued to wreak havoc amongst the prism laser cannons. As he rampaged from time to time, there would be laser and electromagnetic beams that blasted at him, only to be blocked by that layer of black energy shield. On this Shualuo fort, Agu Ya was a one-man army, seemingly invincible. Numerous mech fighters came up to block him under by Yi's controls, only to be smashed into pieces. Inside the command center, Zheng Yin, his heart turned cold. He is a Type 6 high-grade Dino-General. Hearing this, everyone inside the center turned pale. A Type 5 Dino-General was already an invincible existence in close combat. Therefore, the appearance of a Type 6 Dino-General was equivalent to a calamity. The first fort had been breached by a Type 6 Dino-General before. At that time, the entire first fort had been detonated, causing everyone within to die. Only then were they able to eliminate that Type 6 Dino-General. The final Shualuo fort was the only defense standing between the enemies and Cloud Region. Once it was destroyed, Cloud Region would be exposed. Zheng Yin, he turned to the 20 Iron Blood warriors behind him who were wearing Type 5 battle suits and bowed deeply. Now, I can only count on you guys, General Lin Lai. I'll leave it to you guys. The general of the Iron Blood warriors, Lin Lai, replied solemnly, Great General, the military's task has always been to protect the country. This is what we should do. The other 19 Iron Blood warriors also had resolute gazes. Great General, Your Majesty Yue Zhong, we're off. Lin Lai looked towards Yue Zhong and Zheng Yin, he, bowing deeply, before pulling out the Scarlet Dragon pill that could cause a human to employ their fullest potential, and swallowed it. The rest of them also did the same. Yue Zhong sighed. The Scarlet Dragon pill could channel the latent potential of humans, pushing their prowess to a Type 5 realm from the Type 4 realm. Their physique would also be enhanced several times. However, it was not long-lasting. Furthermore, once used, the user will become a monster. After the effects have passed, the user would pass away as a freak. The 20 Iron Blood warriors knew this outcome, and yet chose to proceed with their sacrifice. It was because of people like them, who were not afraid of sacrificing themselves for the sake of their fellow people, that the humans were able to survive these hundreds of years. Compared to them, Wei Mingqing was trash. In order to break through, he had chosen to sacrifice millions of his fellow people. He was nothing compared to these courageous warriors. After consuming those pills, Lin Lai's eyes flashed with hope as he bowed deeply. General, Your Majesty, after our deaths, I hope that we can be cremated and buried with our comrades. We would appreciate passing like our fellow humans. After swallowing the pills, when Lin Lai and the rest died, their bodies would still be in the grotesque state. This was the price for gaining a strength through a shortcut. They were not afraid of death, but feared the lack of recognition from their comrades. Yue Zhong nodded solemnly. Of course, as long as I'm alive, I will definitely set out to finish your wishes. Lin Lai looked at Yue Zhong with gratitude and quickly led his 19 comrades to the city wall. Thank you, Your Majesty. By the time they reached the wall, the 20 of them had already turned into 3M, tall freaks, their veins bulging and fangs coming out of their mouths. Their bodies were covered in scales, and their nails had turned to claws. Yue Zhong looked at them, his eyes flashing with a complicated gaze. He turned and disappeared from his location. Kill him, Lin Lai roared out in rage, pointing at Agu Ya in the distance. The Type 5 battle suit glowed, and all the power converged in his body, allowing him to take a half-step into the Type 6 realm. Kill! 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 The other 19 Iron Blood warriors roared out in response, their eyes flashing with bloodlust. They turned into beams of light that shot towards the Type 6 Agu Ya. Crack! Just as Agu Ya destroyed the last prism laser cannon, the black box in his hands also cracked and disintegrated. The precious Type 6 nucleus was still intact. Due to problems with the production, the black box could not fully absorb the power of the Type 6 nucleus. Every defensive treasure had their limitations. The black box in Agu Ya's hands was no different. After absorbing so many hits, it finally crumbled. It reached its limits already? Forget it. I've already dealt with the prism laser cannons. Now, let me take my time with this fort. Agu Ya eyed the black box before keeping the Type 6 nucleus. He eyed the 20 human soldiers charging at him, revealing a savage smile. Bunch of fools, here to seek death. With a tap of his foot, Agu Ya disappeared from his location. He then appeared right in front of one Iron Blood warrior. His fist came swinging out with the pressure of Mount Tai towards the soldier. At that instant, the Iron Blood warrior who was wearing a Type 5 battlesuit had a huge hole in his chest. His heart was crushed. In the end, this half-step Type 6 Iron Blood warrior was not a match for Agu Ya. Chains! One other Iron Blood warrior roared with rage, his eyes so red that blood seemed ready to spurt out. A powerful psychic chain wrapped around Agu Ya, binding him. Sink! Another Iron Blood warrior bellowed in rage. At that instant, both he and Agu Ya felt the gravity increase by 100 times, forcing both of them down. After chaining Agu Ya, 8 Iron Blood warriors charged forth with their battle spears. They thrust out madly, and that strike was enough to injure a Type 6 expert heavily. This was a strike that they put their all into. An initial Type 6 expert would be killed instantly. Idiots! You humans are too weak. Agu Ya laughed maniacally before his arms flung out with force. The intangible psychic chains immediately broke apart, causing a backlash to the Iron Blood warrior, whose face turned pale and his eyes flashed with astonishment. After shaking off the psychic chains, Agu Ya tapped his foot and charged right for the 8 Iron Blood warriors like a cannonball, his fists slamming into them. In an instant, the bodies of the Iron Blood warriors burst apart violently. Agu Ya was, after all, a peak Type 6 expert. Even some Type 7 divine warriors who were not strong with close-quarter combat might be torn apart by him. As for these human Iron Blood warriors, no matter how much enhancements they got, it was far from enough. At the moment when the 8 Iron Blood warriors were annihilated, a few beams of white light had locked onto the region where Agu Ya was at. Not good. It's a guided energy missile. Agu Ya's face fell and could not care about the remaining Iron Blood warriors. With a tap of his foot, he leaped high into the skies, trying his best to charge into the inner part of the fort. At the same time, his body was covered with a bright radiance of life. Like this, unless the entire fort was detonated, he would not be badly affected. Just as Agu Ya leaped up, the section of the city wall exploded, and the powerful blast consumed the area, while the resulting shockwave spread out. Agu Ya's reaction had been extremely quick, escaping the center of the blast radius. However, he was still besieged by the shockwaves, his radiance of life dimming greatly. Right at that moment, 6 Reapers flew out, their weapons hatch flapping open as they pulled out long alloy blades and shot right for him. Fool! Did you think I was unprepared? Agu Ya laughed coldly, adjusting the bone axe in his hands. A powerful flame shot out from the end of the axe, propelling him towards one of the Reapers. As he appeared in front of the Reaper, he suddenly felt an intense sense of crisis. He raised his both arms in front, and the radiance of life poured out once more, blocking in front of him. The Reaper exploded out with a terrifying blast, and the resulting shockwave enveloped Agu Ya entirely. but he had already calculated that a Reaper was not a match for the Type 6 Agu Ya. The only way to hurt or possibly kill it would be to detonate itself. When the light faded and the dust cleared, Agu Ya emerged from the aftermath. Currently, his radiance of life had disappeared, while his body was riddled with injuries. His both arms were flopping at the side, apparently having suffered serious damage. There was a trickle of blood at the corner of his mouth. He stood in midair, bellowing furiously. "You guys dare to injure me? I will kill you all. I will kill you all." At this moment, an electromagnetic beam shot out suddenly. He was unable to defend himself at that moment, and the beam slammed into his right shoulder, blowing out a huge bloody hole. Agu Ya's body trembled. The axe in his hands burst out in flames once more, sending him towards the ground. In the air, Agu Ya's movement depended entirely on the bone axe in his arms. His speed could not be fast. However, on the ground, he would be able to burst out with an incredible speed. Just as the axe fired out the beam of fire, multiple electromagnetic beams fired out from below. Chapter 9:16. Killing Agu Ya. Chapter 9:16. Killing Agu Ya. Facing the countless assault from below, Agu Ya's left hand reached out and coalesced the radiance of life in front of him. As the beams struck the shield, they caused ripples but were ultimately unable to penetrate. A Type 6 Divine Warrior would be able to control the radiance of life freely in all sorts of combat situations. The electromagnetic beams were also not at a level where they could injure him. The automatic weapons that were suppressing the foreign soldiers outside the wall were now focusing fire on Agu Ya under Bai Yi's control, blasting him with all they got. After forcefully withstanding goodness knows how many attacks, Agu Ya finally landed on the ground with a pale face, spitting out a large mouthful of blood. The radiance of life around his left hand had already collapsed. When the radiance of life on Agu Ya's left hand flickered out, Yue Zhong appeared behind him noiselessly with the help of the Third Order stealth. He sent a powerful punch at Agu Ya's body, enhanced by the Dark Do Chi. Agu Ya's body was incredibly tough, even more so than alloy metal. Under that blow, he was sent flying out like thunder. However, his reaction had been incredibly quick, as his tail swung up with lightning speed and smashed into Yue Zhong barely a millisecond after taking Yue Zhong's hit. Crack! A huge hole appeared in the Type 5 battlesuit on Yue Zhong, the immense force causing a few of his bones to fracture. He was also sent flying dozens of meters while spitting out a mouthful of blood. From afar, a number of laser-mounted vehicles quickly adjusted their aim and fired at Agu Ya. Agu Ya also spat out blood, his radiance of life shining in front of him, forcefully blocking the beams. The life force of a Type 6 expert was truly abundant. Within a short span of time, it is hard for the electromagnetic beams to penetrate it. If it had been any Type 5 expert, they might be able to summon the radiance of life to block, but it would be effective only for a short while. Once the radiance of life was broken through, they would then be pierced by the beams. Yue Zhong slammed hard into a wall, spitting another mouthful of blood. His organs were jolted, as the intense pain nearly sent him unconscious. If it was not for his Third Order body of steel, that earlier strike from Agu Ya could have broken him in two. He bit down hard on his tongue, and the pain kept him awake. He saw the radiance of life enveloping Agu Ya's right hand. Channeling his own devil flame, a powerful scarlet arrow coalesced, and it shot through the air instantaneously, slamming into the radiance of life. As the devil flames burst out, the radiance of life was broken through and started to burn away. At the moment it collapsed, the devil flame punched through and enveloped Agu Ya. Agu Ya immediately screamed out in agony, thrashing about violently, yet he did not die immediately. The electromagnetic beams and laser beams continued to slam into his body, resulting in many holes. With a bright flash, his body was soon turned to ash under the intense blaze of the devil flames. With Agu Ya's death, a huge amount of life force came out of his body, before being absorbed into Yue Zhong through the God and Devil imprint. It swirled around the gold God-Devil nucleus, nourishing it and causing it to grow even larger. Some light gold energy flowed out of the nucleus, spreading through his 4 limbs, enhancing his body. Congratulations, your body of steel has reached the 4th order. Congratulations, you have gained plus 40 in all attributes. Congratulations, you have gained 6 skill points to be allocated. The sweet notifications rang out, and Yue Zhong knew that he had evolved once more. He quickly assigned 5 skill points into the Dark Do Chi, pushing it to the 5th order. Some light gold energy flow converged on the bronze rune, representing the Dark Do Chi skill in his mind. And as the gold energy wrapped around the rune, some silverish and profound engravings appeared on the runes. Yue Zhong quickly channeled the Dark Do Chi to his injuries, and his bones started producing cracking sounds as they began healing rapidly. Within 5 minutes, Yue Zhong's wounds had recovered with the help of the Dark Do Chi and regeneration skills. He then stood up swiftly and started stretching, discovering that he was in tip-top condition. My recovery abilities are on par with a Type 4 mutant beast. In terms of combat strength, while I'm still slightly off from the Type 6 realm, I'm at least at the peak of Type 5. Oh, this is Type 6 nucleus, nice. Yue Zhong suppressed his joy and swiftly kept the Type 6 nucleus into his ring, before charging back towards the wall. Although Agu Ya had been killed by Yue Zhong and by joining hands, he had managed to destroy the cluster of prism laser cannons. At the same time, in order to kill this Agu Ya, he had to redirect most of the firepower, allowing the other elites of the foreign races to approach the fort. Zhong, he deployed 10,000 soldiers into the battle, and both sides got embroiled in a cruel slaughter. The human soldiers had the advantage of technologically advanced weapons, while they were not a match for the Tyranno warriors, which were natural close-quarter combat specialists. A dozen Tyranno warriors charged into the human army and began to slaughter human soldiers. Their bodies darted across the battlefield. Everywhere they went, fresh blood would splatter amidst dismembered limbs, and the human soldiers were basically helpless. However, the remaining Iron Blood warriors that had consumed the Scarlet Dragon pills and not joined the battle at the fort quickly dashed forward to meet the Tyranno warriors and elites from the foreign races. When they were facing Agu Ya, they had been helpless. However, with their half-step Type 6 realm, they were truly able to fend off the elites of the foreign races. At this time, a number of heavy assault helicopters rose into the skies, releasing energy bombs and cluster bombs over the foreign armies. White light, flames, and dust rose into the skies, enveloping the entire area. Tens of thousands of soldiers died under the bombardment from the assault helicopters. All of a sudden, numerous Type 3 and Type 4 pterosaurs flew into the air, heading for the assault helicopters. Some of those that flew too far ahead was pounced on by the Type 4 pterosaurs. The rotating blades were all knocked askew, and they shuddered in mid-air before plunging towards the ground, exploding in a ball of flames. In response, the heavy assault helicopters began to fire at those Type 4 pterosaurs, the guided energy missiles exploding upon contact. It resulted in huge, bloody holes, and the pterosaurs squawked as they fell to their deaths. Due to the absence of the prism laser cannons, the heavy assault helicopters had no choice but to retreat while attacking, back into the range of the anti-air defenses. However, the Type 3 and Type 4 pterosaurs did not seem to mind their own lives, chasing after them and perishing together with the destruction of the helicopters. In the skies, an entire flock of pterosaurs flew towards them, with Tyranno warriors, Diplodocus warriors, Velociraptor warriors, and other Dino warriors riding on them. Within the Shuel Luo fort, the strongest air defense was the laser prism cannons, their effective range over 18 kilometers. If they were still present, the airborne enemy troops would not have an easy time. Since those equipment were already destroyed, the Dino warriors began to activate their elite forces. Facing the insane assault of the helicopters, Yue Zhong's army did not care so much about reserving their strength and threw all they had into the battle. The pterosaur riders came above the fort and jumped down, intending to land straight within the fort. Many of them perished on their way down due to the multiple laser beams. However, a fair bit managed to land. The moment they landed, they were like an unstoppable force, massacring the human soldiers. At the front lines of the battle, those Iron Blood warriors were coming to the end of the effects of the Scarlet Dragon pills, coughing out blood as they crumpled to the ground. The next moment, they were torn apart by the foreign races. In order to fend off the Dino warriors, Zheng Yin, he sent out another 30 Reapers into the battle. When they entered the battle, they began to reap the lives of the foreign soldiers, decapitating and firing holes at them. Even so, the human soldiers were still being ripped apart by the foreign races every second. At the same time, the automatic defenses on the fort were being destroyed as well, and the battle reached a dangerous point. Yue Zhong casually sent out a fist, killing a Type 4 Dino-General, as he frowned when he saw the situation of the fort. Shit, the fort is going to be breached if this goes on. Chapter 917, Bad Situation. Chapter 917, Bad Situation. Deep within the Dino army camp, the Type 7 Emperor Balong looked towards the distance while covered in a layer of dark energy. He coldly ordered, Kong Liangjin, Kong Sunju, go bring your men to attack as well. We must destroy that fort. Yes, the two Type 6 high-grade Dino-Generals stood up and saluted respectfully before making their way out. Soon, two units dashed out of the camp swiftly. One unit comprised of tall and massive Diplodocus warriors of about 7 or 8 m in height. The other had smaller Velociraptor warriors of about 1.67 m. In these two units, the weakest was a low-grade Dino-General, and they were considered the elite of the elite among the Diplodocus Kingdom and the Velociraptor Kingdom. Among them, there were 60 of the rare Type 5 mid-grade Dino-Generals, while the low-grade Dino-Generals numbered 3,000. In the field, they could easily wipe out a 300,000-strong unit of any other race. These two terrifying units were made up mostly of Type 4 experts, their speed already surpassing the sound barrier. They got through the vassal forces and made a beeline for the fort. Each low-grade Dino-General was capable of slaughtering over hundreds of human soldiers in close combat. Therefore, they had no fear as they rushed through the battlefield. The energy cannons on the fort continued to fire out continuously, but due to the lapse between firing rate, after paying the price of a few casualties, they managed to breach the defensive line of the cannons. Warning! Warning! Based on calculations, the enemy has deployed 122 Type 5 mid-grade Dino-Generals, 2 Type 6 Dino-Generals, and 8,345 Type 4 Dino-Generals. Once they get close, the chances of the fort being destroyed will be 95%. All of a sudden, Bai Yi's voice sounded out from the communicator in Yue Zhong's right hand. When Agu Ya was attacking the fort, Bai Yi had already picked up the information on the Type 5 and Type 6 Dino-Generals for various sensors. Due to Yue Zhong's concern about another assault by a Type 6 expert, most of the biological sensors have been activated and information flowed to Bai Yi constantly, allowing her to perform live updates and calculations. When they heard the report, everyone inside the command center turned pale. They had just witnessed the terror of a Type 6 expert for themselves barely moments ago. Agu Ya was able to destroy those Iron Blood warriors who had donned on Type 5 battlesuits and consumed the Scarlet Dragon pills. He even managed to destroy those prism laser cannons that could devastate Type 5 experts. Now, two were on their way. With Shui Luo Fort's current defenses, it was impossible to withstand such an attack. If the defenses of the Shui Luo Fort was still in prime condition, they would be able to beat back the Type 6 experts. However, they did not have that now. The deaths of the millions of vassal soldiers were not in vain. They used their own lives in exchange for the destruction of the defense systems, wearing down on the strength of the fort. At the moment when the defenses were the weakest, the Type 6 experts chose to act. Zheng Yanhe's face fell slightly. However, he maintained his calm, passing a flurry of orders, adjust the energy missiles coordinates. A small mountain behind the 20th fort split open, revealing a number of missile launchers. Many guided energy missiles shot into the skies, soaring the front of the fort. About 6 kilometers behind the fort, there were some rocket firing pads as well, as the vehicles and weapons parked there began to unleash a torrential rain of rockets into the skies. From the various corners of the fort, panels opened as guided missiles shot out towards the front area of the fort. In order to wipe out those 2 incoming Type 6 experts, all the weapons were activated. Honk! 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 In front of the 20 forts, bright lights flashed without any blind spots, blasting many of the foreign races as well as numerous Dino-Generals. Many seemingly invincible Type 5 Dino-Generals were also turned to ashes before that mighty carnage before even exhibiting their strength. While many of the Dino-Generals were reduced to dust, one of the smaller figures had activated her radiance of life at the first chance she got, penetrating the death zone, leaping up the fort. This small shadow was the leader of the Velociraptor warriors, the Type 6 Kong Sun-ju. The moment she leaped up the fort, she charged right for the inner parts. A number of blood arrows appeared in the air. In the face of this terrifying enemy, the human soldiers could not even react before their heads were cleaved away swiftly. The mech fighters could not react as well, and they were ripped apart into pieces. In a breath, over 100 human soldiers and 300 mech fighters had been eradicated. The terrifying thing was that Kong Sun-ju had no intention of staying there for a moment longer than necessary. She continued to charge right through, tearing apart anything in her way. Seeing this nightmare in front of them, everyone inside the command center felt a chill in their hearts. If she managed to breach the fort, almost nothing could stop her. Zheng Yin, he had a calm expression, continuing to command the various troops to impede Kong Sun-ju. Numerous city guard soldiers in Type 3 battle suits charged forwards with battle intent, blocking her way. Trash! Kong Sun-ju casually tore an automatic electromagnetic cannon apart, laughing coldly at the city guards in front of her. She then suddenly disappeared from her location. The bodies of the city guards suddenly split apart in showers of blood, turning into multiple pieces of flesh. When everyone in the command center saw this, their hearts almost stopped. The 200 fully equipped city guards did not even last 10 seconds. Inside the fort, no one could stop her advance. At the same time, another devastating scene occurred, as an 8M, tall figure wrapped in radiance of life leaped up the fort with ease. The huge, towering figure was the Type 6 Dino-General Kong Liang-jin, and he was wielding a huge bone about 12 m in length. With a single sweep, he smashed through a Reaper. His powerful strength exploded out, causing the energy shield to shatter before the Reaper became a heap of scrap metal. Seeing this, the soldiers were terrified. Each Reaper was a precious trump card manufactured by the human race. Their energy shields could theoretically withstand the hits of Type 6 experts. However, Kong Liang-jin had just used a single hit to smash the Reaper. His strength was truly at an unfathomable level. After destroying the Reaper, Kong Liang-jin flashed and reappeared like a demon among the humans, swinging his huge bone bat in a whirlwind, causing carnage. The moment he came up on the fort, many of the humans were slaughtered by him, as blood flowed and limbs flew about. It was practically unstoppable. At this moment, within the command center, Yue Zhong's projection appeared on a display as he ordered, "General Zhong, I'll leave the 20th fort to you temporarily. I have something I need to do, and I'll have to leave for a while." Zheng Yin, he nodded with a resolute gaze. "Rest assured, Your Majesty, I will defend this place with my life." Yue Zhong then cut off the communication. With a thought, he summoned Greenie, which appeared out of thin air. He pat its back lightly, and they shot into the sky with a flash, heading for the Dino Army camp. At the same time, the storm battleship that had been hidden also soared into the skies, turning into a flash of light that shot towards the distance. As Yue Zhong and Greenie soared in the air, a number of Type 3 and Type 4 pterosaurs flew over. They all had black, hardy scales, their beaks filled with razor-sharp teeth. They even had long, sharp claws. The dozens of them shot towards Yue Zhong with a cold, killing intent. Yue Zhong's eyes narrowed and began to fire his electromagnetic cannon without stop. With his third-order firearms manipulation, the beams pierced through the heads of the pterosaurs, causing their corpses to plunge to the ground. It's him! It's him! He's finally out! He's finally come out from a fort! Ha ha! Within the camp, a look of ecstasy flashed in the eyes of the Type 7 Emperor Balong, whose body was enveloped in the dark energy. He turned into a beam of light as he shot towards Yue Zhong. Chapter 9:18 Type 7 Emperor Balong. Chapter 9:18 Type 7 Emperor Balong. In the sky, Yue Zhong suddenly felt a hair-raising sense of danger. He turned to the source, only to discover a terrifying figure wrapped in black energy shooting towards him. Yue Zhong eyed the figure and felt a sense of fear and helplessness. His danger perception was alarming him about the vast difference between himself and the owner of that black energy. In front of him, he's just a slightly bigger ant. Type 7 expert. His thoughts came up to this point, and he could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. If it were a Type 6 peak expert, even if Yue Zhong was not a match, his danger perception could alert him to the threat of the enemy, but never helplessness. Currently, under the oppressive aura of the Type 7 Emperor Balong, Yue Zhong's body was shuddering. He was extremely clear that in a frontal clash, he would be smacked to death in a single hit. It must be known that Yue Zhong had to give it his all, together with the defenses of the fort, to kill the Type 6 Agu Ya with a sneak attack. Against this existence that was superior to Agu Ya, Yue Zhong knew he had no chance of victory. Yue Zhong patted Greenie's back and barked, "Greenie, go! Maximum speed!" Even Greenie had felt the threat from the Type 7 Emperor Balong. It channeled its innate ability in a frenzy, as countless tornadoes were whipped up around its body. Its speed then increased by 50%, reaching Mach 3 speed. Damn it! Emperor Balong saw Greenie fleeing quickly and let out an infuriated roar. As a Type 7 expert, it could manipulate the energy of the environment to propel it through the air. However, it was not an air-based expert, thus, its speed could only reach Mach 1. It was unable to catch up to the speedy Greenie. "Break for me!" The eyes of Emperor Balong flashed, as he threw out his right fist that was wrapped in that overbearing black energy, while his body was covered with an abundant radiance of life. A black and white beam shot towards Greenie like a laser beam, twisting violently and tore Greenie's body apart. A huge bloody hole appeared as bones, blood, and organs fell out from the wound. Suffering this grievous wound, Greenie's body shuddered, and the energies around its body disappeared. Its eyes dimmed as it began to plummet towards the ground. "Greenie!" The moment they landed on the ground, Yue Zhong rushed over towards Greenie, whose body was racked with injuries, his heart aching for it. Greenie was one of the earliest tamed beasts of Yue Zhong, having followed him through countless battles. It had saved his life on countless occasions. He had grown to treat it as his most important companion, and now that this little fellow had been gravely injured by the Emperor Balong, Yue Zhong was filled with anguish and hatred. "Damn Dino person! There'll be a day for your reckoning. I'll crush your entire race." Yue Zhong suppressed the pain in his heart as he swept a glance at Greenie, before activating his Dark Do Chi and third-order stealth. He then dashed towards the forest. Currently, Greenie was still not dead. However, if Yue Zhong were to stay, then the two of them would definitely die. The Type 7 Divine Warrior was simply too strong. Yue Zhong had no way of dealing with it, even by employing all his trump cards. Yue Zhong had not left for more than 10 seconds when the black figure shot past overhead. It did not even spare Greenie a glance. Emperor Balong had slaughtered numerous mutant beasts, many of them Type 5. Only those at the Type 6 and Type 7 realm would cause him to hesitate. A Type 4 mutant beast was practically an ant to him. Yue Zhong dashed through the forest, empowered by the dark Do Qi. His speed had reached the 2.5 Mach limit. The air and wind around him were like blades that cut into his skin. If it was not for his powerful endurance, he could not possibly travel like this for long. At that speed, his stamina was also being reduced at a drastic rate. He could at most hang out for another 5 minutes. As he ran, his heart was pounding fast. He knew that the dangerous entity was closing in on him. On the ground, even if his speed was 2.5 Mach, he could not outrun the Type 7 Emperor Ba Long. The stern and overbearing voice from the Dino-Emperor resounded. "Human, surrender now and hand me the god and devil imprint obediently, and I will spare your life, making you a leader of the country." Yue Zhong kept quiet, taking a deep breath, and charged forwards without the intention of minding his words. As long as he spoke, he would reveal his location, and his speed would decrease. At this critical juncture, even slowing down slightly would mean death. After 1 second, Yue Zhong looked up into the sky with joy, noticing the fortress-like storm battleship soaring over here. Activating his bone-encompassing armor, the bone carapace enveloped him. With a thought, 2 sharp bone spikes sent him into the sky towards the storm battleship. Emperor Ba Long lifted his head and recognized the storm battleship. His pupils narrowed as he shot towards it. This is the storm battleship, one of the final war weapons of humankind. This antiquity is still around. It doesn't seem to have enough energy. Let me destroy this weapon myself. The storm battleship was a legacy weapon from the war between the humans and Dino race. At its peak, even Type 7 experts would perish under its assault. However, it required a huge amount of energy. Each time it battled, it would require Type 6 and even Type 7 mutant beast nuclei. It could not sustain combat for long, and in the end, many of them had been destroyed by the Type 7 experts then. Emperor Ba Long looked on as Yue Zhong got on the battleship, his eyes flashing with a cold light. He then channeled the black energy through his right fist and sent a punch towards the battleship. A black fist tore through the skies, blasting towards Yue Zhong. Yue Zhong had no way of dodging it, and could only channel the dark Do Qi to envelop himself. He flipped his hands, and a huge shield and another energy shield appeared, blocking in front of him. When the black beam slammed into the energy shield, it shattered instantly. It then hit the huge shield, also destroying it. Finally, having lost some of its momentum, the beam then slammed into Yue Zhong, sending him shooting towards the battleship, leaving him with more broken bones. Thankfully, I've already evolved. Otherwise, I would have died from that strike. Yue Zhong felt a sharp pain in his chest as he coughed out once. A large amount of blood came out, mixed in with some pieces of his organs, and he thought to himself, if it were him before fighting Agu Ya, that single strike could have killed him. Since he evolved and his dark Do Qi had been strengthened, it had saved his life, preventing him from becoming a meat paste. Attack! Protect the leader! Many of Yue Zhong's soldiers on board the ship quickly joined the fray. They pulled out laser guns and electromagnetic cannons and fired wildly at Emperor Ba Long. When the attacks hit the body of Emperor Ba Long, they were dispersed without much effect. At the same time, over 1,000 winged elites flew out, pulling out their bows and arrows and firing at Emperor Ba Long. Scram! Emperor Ba Long eyed the winged elites coldly and sucked in a deep breath before barking out loud. A tyrannical sound wave blasted outward, and 1,000 winged elites who were lower than the Type 3 Divine realm bled from their orifices and died. The rest who were more fortunate felt their eardrums shatter and a powerful headache. The 1,000 winged elites started to fall out of the air from a single roar emitted by the Emperor Ba Long. Within the storm battleship, although it had a strong soundproof material, the hundreds of human soldiers were still affected the tremors caused by the roar. They also bled from their orifices and died. By E, hurry activate the defense systems. Yue Zhong charged through the battleship and came in front of a computer panel where a compartment appeared. He swiftly placed the 2 precious Type 6 mutant beast nuclei, as well as 10 Type 5 nuclei, hollering out anxiously. The moment Emperor Balong was allowed to rampage through this battleship, the hundreds of thousands of lives on this battleship would be sacrificed. That was how terrifying a Type 7 expert was. They were akin to a disaster. Got it. Systems activated. Energy transference in progress. Detecting defensive systems. Progress at 83.3%. Permission granted. Energy transference through. Defenses activated. After a flurry of announcements from Bai Yi, the storm battleship lit up radiantly, releasing bright lights everywhere. The calm and impassive Emperor Along finally felt a tinge of fear. Shit! The defense systems are activated. Chapter 919. Halfway down, the last fort. Chapter 919. Halfway down, the last fort. Countless beams shot out from the storm battleship, and a huge energy shield formed, encompassing the battleship. The face of Emperor Balong fell as he stepped through the air, arriving in front of the battleship. He sent a fist wrapped in the black energy, blasting towards the shield. Following a loud impact, Emperor Balong's fist was able to send a terrifying shockwave all around the shield, the ripple almost breaking it apart. Warning! Warning! Due to the attack from a Type 7 expert, the energy shield's defense ability has decreased by 1%. After that strike from Emperor Balong, alarms rang throughout the entire storm battleship. The massive battleship's shield could not diffuse the power of the Emperor Balong. It was truly a testimony to how powerful he was. Yue Zhong swiftly ordered, "Leave here immediately. Head for the Shui Luo fort." Yes. Under Yue Zhong's orders, the battleship flashed forward, with its speed reaching a terrifying Mach 5 speed. Damn it! When Emperor Balong saw how fast the storm battleship was, he roared out in rage. He sent another fist out, the black energy from his fist directly tearing apart a small mountain below him. The storm battleship could only withstand a Type 7 expert if it had a Type 7 mutant beast nucleus. However, with the absorption of the Type 6 nuclei, its flying speed was not something a Type 7 expert could keep up with. Soon, the battleship managed to fly above the battlefield. In the skies, there were many Type 2, Type 3, and even Type 4 mutant pterosaurs flying about in droves. It was a horrendous sight, as though the entire sky was being covered. Yue Zhong eyed the beasts and ordered, "Barge through them." The storm battleship then charged through like a shooting star, slamming right into the flock of pterosaurs. One of the Type 4 pterosaur of over 80 m in wingspan was slammed by the battleship, and its body instantly contorted, turning into meat paste splattering all over the energy shield. The rest of the mutant pterosaurs also faced the same fate when they were slammed into, dropping out of the skies. In just 2 breaths, over 100 pterosaurs had been knocked out of the skies, and the storm battleship had charged right through them. Currently, the Shui Luo fort was already at a half-collapsed state. Hordes of Dino warriors were charging into the fort, slaughtering the human soldiers. There were many human corpses and broken mech fighters strewn all over the field, as well as the broken remnants of the defense systems. Within the human army, many were fighting back valiantly. However, there were also many who could not take the pressure and fled. Among these 100,000 soldiers, the ones who fought back with much valor were the veterans from the 1st to 3rd forts. They had a strong faith and believed in honor. Even when their casualties reached 40%, they did not crumble nor lose hope. Instead, fighting as hard as ever. Although the soldiers of the 4th to 9th fort had strict training, the moment their death toll reached 20%, many started to flee in defeat. Within the fort, one Type 3 Velociraptor laughed savagely. His body flashed forward, and his right claw reached out to slash at a fleeing human soldier, tearing him in two. "No! Help! Help me!" Seeing their comrades dying at the hands of the Velociraptor warrior, many of the human soldiers began to panic and screamed in fear. The current number of fleeing soldiers were at least a dozen. If they worked together and turned back to fire at the Type 3 Velociraptor, they might possibly defeat him. However, all that was in their hearts now was fear. One soldier wearing a Type 4 battlesuit and wielding a battle spear shot forward. His spear radiated with a bright light, piercing directly into the chest of the Velociraptor warrior. "Don't run. Turn around and fight." Before he could finish his words, a huge bone mace came down from the sky, smashing into his body, turning him into meat paste. Kong Liang-jin walked over, his towering height of 8 meters, his eyes flashing with a vicious light. He then grabbed a struggling human soldier and took a huge bite out of him. With a loud crack, the human soldier was bitten in two, his organs spilling out from Kong Liang-jin's mouth, giving him an even more terrifying look. Seeing that gruesome scene was enough to send the rest of the human soldiers around to break down and try to flee. Ha ha ha! The Type 6 Dino-General let out a loud and savage laugh as he shot forward, waving his bone bat, smashing 5 or 6 human soldiers into meat paste. Right then, a laser beam shot out from a bunker, blasting into the body of Kong Liang-jin. The laser beam that could pierce a tank barely caused a graze in Kong Liang-jin's body. He stepped forward in fury, his bone bat smashing down on the bunker. His terrifying strength exploded out, directly destroying the bunker and the human soldiers inside. The wound on his body healed at an incredible speed. After he casually destroyed that bunker, he charged towards the other bunkers, destroying each one the moment he appeared in front of them. These bunkers that were hard to destroy, even with the firepower from tanks, were crushed easily by him, and many human soldiers were turned into meat paste. From within the pile of a destroyed bunker, one human soldier had a cold gaze as he locked onto a Tyranno warrior that was munching on the body of a human soldier and fired his weapon. The beam shot through the air and blasted the Tyranno warrior's head wide open. With a swish, 5 lizard warriors and 2 Diplodocus warriors turned over and disappeared from their locations, charging over towards him. "Freaks, your granddaddy is over here." The human soldier barely managed to croak out when a Diplodocus warrior appeared behind him. With a single fist, the Diplodocus warrior pummeled the human soldiers, crushing his head like a watermelon. In close combat, humans could never compare with these foreign races. This was the biggest disadvantage of the humans. At almost the same time, a bright light flashed from that location. The next moment, a huge explosion consumed that Diplodocus warrior, as well as the 3 lizard warriors that had gotten too close. Inside the command center, all the officers were staring at the displays with pale countenances. Every single display was feeding back the defeat and deaths of the human soldiers, as well as the massacre by the Dino warriors. At the same time, there were many heroes who did not care about their own lives and took out their enemies in suicide attacks. Bai Yi was helping out Zheng Yanhe, but in the face of absolute strength, it was futile. With every passing second, more equipment was being destroyed, and over thousands of soldiers were dying. There were some who were fearful to the point they got down on their knees to surrender, only to be eaten alive. After the world had changed, many of the mutant beasts had further evolved to possess intelligence and had savagery in their blood. In their hunger, they could even consume the corpses of other races. Humans were just moving food to them. One officer came up to Zheng Yanhe and tried to persuade him, "General, it's time to evacuate. The fort is going to fall. We have to run now, otherwise it'll be too late." Everyone's gaze fell upon him, their eyes flickering with hope. Even ants were fearful of death, much less these humans. Zheng Yanhe had a steely glint as he glared at the officer. "No, when His Majesty gave me the reins over the fort, I'd promised to live and die with the fort. Now, there are many of our valiant and heroic comrades who are still down there fighting. As their comrade, friend, and commander, how can I do such a cowardly thing? Zhui, do not speak to me about evacuating ever again." Zhui stepped back in shame. "Yes, great general." Zheng Yanhe turned around and bowed deeply, Everyone, we are the core, the heart, the brain of this entire fort. We cannot leave at this critical moment. I hope that everyone can join me and fight to the last breath for the sake of our people in Cloud Region. Please, we're willing to die with Great General. Inside the command center, everyone felt bolstered by his words and roared out in heated excitement. As the highest commander in the fort, Zhang Yin, he actually did not choose to retreat, putting his life on the line. These hot-blooded warriors would naturally not leave him behind as well. Chapter 920, Raytheon Cannon. Chapter 920, Raytheon Cannon. About 300 m away from the fort, a Type 5 Velociraptor warrior pounced onto a fleeing human soldier, chomping down on his neck. With a loud crack, the neck of the soldier was snapped. The Velociraptor warrior then used his claws to grab the body while devouring the rest of him. It was a truly gory sight. At one corner of the fort, there was a human in a Type 5 battle suit hidden within the ruins. There was only the slightest sign of life from him, as though he was dead, and he wielded a special RS-335 electromagnetic sniper cannon, quietly staring at a distance. This particular human soldier was called Agu Ya. He was the top sniper of the first fort, and the weapon in his hand was a specially customized elite sniper weapon. It required Type 5 mutant beast nuclei to power and could destroy tanks with a single shot. There were only about 15 of such rifles within the entire Cloud region. After all, the Type 5 mutant beast nuclei were too precious. Furthermore, most of them were used to power the Type 5 battle suits, or to power the more powerful Reapers. When the Type 5 Velociraptor warrior was consuming the human soldier, Agu Ya silently pulled the trigger. A terrifying electromagnetic beam shot out and directly penetrated the head of the Velociraptor warrior, blasting it apart. The dozens of other Velociraptor warriors turned to stare at the rubble, and with a tap of their feet, they darted over. Agu Ya quickly jumped up from his spot, pulling out 2 ordinary electromagnetic cannons, and retreated. He fired out continuously, killing off the ordinary Velociraptor warriors. However, there were 10 Type 4 experts within them, and since their race had an advantage in speed, it was hard for the naked eye to capture their movements. Agu Ya was also just an initial Type 4 Divine Warrior. He was exceptional in his sniping skills, but nothing else. Even with his Type 5 battle suit, his speed could not outstrip those Velociraptor warriors and their powerful legs. The 10 Velociraptor warriors appeared all around him, preparing to pounce on him. Is it over? At least I managed to wipe out a Type 5 Dino warrior. A powerful sense of death welled up in his heart, and his eyes flashed with a resolute glint. The Type 5 nucleus behind also began to glow brightly. Right as he was about to risk his life, a number of light beams shot down from the skies, and the heads of the Velociraptor warriors erupted. What's going on? Agu Ya lifted his head to the skies, only to discover an enormous floating fortress with countless beams of light raining upon the fort and battlefield. At another part of the battlefield, dozens of Velociraptor warriors were hunting hundreds of human soldiers. There were many corpses of human soldiers, torn apart and badly mangled. In contrast, there were only 1 or 2 Velociraptor warrior corpses. The rhythm of the battle was slowly moving towards the favor of the Dino army, and it seemed impossible for the human soldiers to turn the tide. At the same time, the casualties of humans compared to foreign races were more than 100:1. Each time a foreign race soldier was killed, over 100 humans had already been killed. One Velociraptor warrior pounced lightly and knocked a human soldier down on the ground, opening his jaws in preparation to crunch down on the head of the unfortunate soldier. The human soldier's eyes flashed with despair and hopelessness. At that moment, a beam of light shot down and pierced the Velociraptor warrior's head, directly killing him. Fresh blood splattered all over the human soldiers. What is that? Has God come and save us? Having returned from the gates of death, the human soldier looked up at the floating fortress, his gaze full of wonder and amazement. Inside the command center, Zhong Yin he saw the storm battleship and exclaimed in spite of himself, "That's His Majesty. That's Yue Zhong. He did not abandon us. He's back." Zhong Yin he thought that Yue Zhong had abandoned them and chose to retreat himself. He knew that it would have been the right choice to make. After all, he was the emperor and the whole Cloud region needed him. If he fell, they would have no leader and there would just be internal chaos. However, he still could not help but feel disappointed. It was all wiped away the moment he saw the storm battleship. His hope was rekindled. His Majesty Yue Zhong. Is that really His Majesty? Long live His Majesty Yue Zhong. Instantly, the command center erupted in excited cheers. These commanders had all made the resolute decision to die. However, upon hearing that there was a chance to survive, they could not help themselves. Zhong Yin he swiftly passed the order. Immediately convey the command. His Majesty Yue Zhong has arrived with reinforcements. They have to fight on. Yes. With his command, the various officers quickly got to work, disseminating the information into the multi-purpose helmets of the human soldiers. Inside the command center, Zhong Yin he's orders could reach every single rank-and-file soldier. However, once there was panic and chaos, it did not matter the command from above. No one would follow. Upon hearing that Yue Zhong was back with reinforcements, the soldiers on the front lines immediately got invigorated, their morale rising. Many of those who were fleeing turned their heads to see the storm battleship, feeling excited and ashamed at the same time. The beams of light from the battleship was taking out hundreds of Dino warriors like it was nothing. Every single existence under the Type 5 realm was being annihilated. Energy depletion at 20%. Based on the current speed, the battleship will run out of energy in 5 minutes. Based on estimations, after 2 minutes, other than the 2 Type 6 Divine Warriors, all other enemies will be wiped out. A number of robotic announcements reported the situation to Yue Zhong. The battleship was the final weapon of war produced by the human race in the past. With terrifying firepower, its central computer was even more powerful than those of the forts. When Bai Yi gained control of the computer, she was able to fully exhibit the calculation powers of the incredible piece of technology. The firing of the lasers was extremely precise, instantly killing many Type 5 Dino warriors. Each time, there was a volley of laser beams. Many of the Type 3 and Type 4 mutant beast nuclei would shatter, channeling the energy into the battleship. "Get rid of that fellow." Yue Zhong pointed to Kong Liangjin rampaging around in the fort and ordered. Yes, killing the Type 6 Divine Warrior, based on estimated, would take 3 Type 5 mutant beast nuclei. Please insert the Type 5 or Type 6 nuclei to proceed. Following a robotic sound, an energy compartment revealed itself in front of Yue Zhong. Yue Zhong frowned but decided to throw 3 precious Type 5 mutant beast nuclei into the compartment. After taking down the capital, he had gained many of them. Killing a Type 6 Divine Warrior with 3 Type 5 nuclei was worth it. After all, if he were to face Kong Liangjin now, it was likely that he would lose. When the third nucleus was inserted, a panel on top of the battleship opened, revealing a 10 tall cannon with countless engravings on it. The cannon seemed to be made out of countless crystal tubes, and, as it stuck out, it turned to point towards Kong Liangjin. Not good. Danger. The moment the cannon revealed itself, Kong Liangjin felt a sense of danger, stopping himself in the midst of his murderous rampage. With a tap of his foot, he retreated explosively. Countless light beams traveled along the crystal-like tubes, converging inside the main cannon, as the runes all around started to light up. At the next moment, a terrifying laser beam shot out from the cannon, instantly reaching the ground. The point of impact lit up glaringly, reaching an area of about 1 kilometer in diameter, consuming Kong Liangjin. Raytheon cannon. No. Kong Liangjin let out a scream of fear and rage, his body erupting with the radiance of life to try to defend himself. Under the assault of that seemingly godly light, Kong Liang Jin's radiance of life was smashed through like nothing, his body enveloped by it. After the light dispersed, the area had turned into a huge pit, and the Type 6 Kong Liang Jin had been reduced to nothing more than dust. Raytheon cannon. That was the Raytheon cannon. At the other side of the fort, the Type 6 Kong Sun-ju had seen how the Pillar of Light destroyed her comrade. Her face turned pale as she quickly tried to escape deeper in a cloud region. With her current position, the only way of survival was in. Chapter 921. The Fall of Xue Luo Fort. Chapter 921. The Fall of Xue Luo Fort. The second Type 6 Divine Warrior has already fled outside of the sure kill range. Based on estimations, the chances of killing are 30%, heavily injured 50%, not hitting her at all 20%. Do you want to proceed? If so, please insert Type 5 nuclei. Another compartment appeared in front of Yue Zhong. The Storm battleship's main Raytheon cannon was incredibly powerful. A single shot from it could kill a Type 6 Divine Warrior. Within the region of 5 kilometers, it could definitely kill one in a single shot. Outside of the region, due to the speed of the Type 6 Divine Warrior, the Raytheon cannon could not get a guaranteed kill in one hit. Yue Zhong fell silent for a moment and made a choice. Do not attack. On the way back to the Xue Luo fort, he had seen the number of Dino army camps. There were too many Dino warriors around. Even if he used up all the nuclei in his hands, he would not be able to wipe out all of them. They were different from the human soldiers. All of the foreign races were being deployed out at full strength into the battlefield. Even a female Dino warrior could be utilized in war. They were just slightly weaker than the male ones, and they were similarly proficient in hunting, working, and fighting. This was the terrifying thing about the foreign races. The gigantic Storm battleship landed slowly near the hull of the fort and began to fire out countless beams at the Dino warriors, killing them all. In the Xue Luo fort's command center, the display suddenly lit up and Yue Zhong's figure appeared. He immediately gave an order. This is Yue Zhong, General Zhong. Heed my commands. Gather all personnel to board the battleship right now. Zhang Yanhe's heart sank. Your Majesty, if all the soldiers are to board, what happens to the fort? Yue Zhong replied sternly, give it up. We have to evacuate immediately. The enemy is too strong. Even with this battleship, we cannot defend it. If we don't evacuate now, we will all fall here. We need to preserve our men. Zhang Yanhe fell silent for a moment before replying solemnly. Understood. Your Majesty. He knew what Yue Zhong meant. These were all the elites of the human race. They had already suffered for so long, and yet they managed to hold out and fend off an enemy 20 times the size of themselves. If these elite forces were to fall here, it would be a huge loss to the human race. If they all survived and were reorganized through the baptism of hell and fire, they would be an intensely strong army. Zhang Yanhe proceeded to give short but precise orders, and the various soldiers of the front line began to move from their cover towards the battleship. A huge cloud of black energy came shooting from a distance, entering the command center of the Dino army. It was the Type 7 Emperor Balong. The moment Emperor Balong got back to the seat, he roared out in fury, "Damn it! It's the Storm battleship. That sort of historical weapon shouldn't even exist in this world. Attack! Attack with full force." If it had been on the field, Emperor Balong had the confidence that he could whittle down the battleship's energy shield, since it was not fully powered at the moment. However, the Storm battleship was on the Xue Luo fort right now. As long as the Raytheon cannon was fired, even he would be injured. He did not want to fall at the Xue Luo fort. In any case, even if more of his Dino army perished, it would not matter to him. The Dino race had already been the overlords of this world for so long. It would not take much effort to repopulate. Under Emperor Balong's order, all the Dino warriors roared out madly in response and charged towards the fort. In the skies, the pterosaurs also soared over in huge droves, blocking out the sky. On the battleship, all the soldiers were currently behind cover, utilizing their weapons to fire at the incoming enemies. At this moment, the winged race, Storm Valley, and Yue Zhong's army were all giving it their best, attacking the Dino warriors. They had no more intentions of hiding behind. It was a critical moment, and should the Dino warriors make it past their ship, everyone would die. The elites who had just boarded the ship managed to catch a moment's breath before taking up their weapons again and engaged in combat under the instructions of Bai. The various Dino warriors charged over, only to be fired full of holes under the rain of laser beams. With that sort of mindless and suicidal charge, the energy of the battleship was being depleted. Even with the help of the human soldiers defending, many Type 3 and Type 4 nuclei shattered upon their depletion. The might of the battleship was overbearing because it had a huge energy reserve. Thus, in order to retain that sort of firing rate, the energy had to be sufficient. It was precisely because the Storm battleship had been depleted of its energy in the past that the humans of that era had fallen at the hands of the Dino warriors and forced in a cloud region. On the hull, Yue Zhong wielded his electromagnetic cannon and fired out constantly. Each of his shots would cause a pterosaur to be killed in a shower of blood. The pterosaurs in the skies, as well as their riders, would descend sharply, dropping right into the midst of the humans. They would then slaughter whoever they could, as well as destroy the automatic defenses before being killed. Guosai, the excellent sniper, was currently camped out at a dark corner. Each time he pulled the trigger, he would claim the life of a low-grade Dino-General or a mid-grade Dino-General. Although there was a large number of human experts acting, from time to time, many of them would be torn apart by the descending Dino warriors and their pterosaur mounts. With the firepower of the battleship, it could easily produce a huge fire net, preventing the Dino warriors from entering the ship, at the same time wiping out all of them near the fort. However, in doing so, it would take up too much energy. With the current reserves, they could use that to hold out for at most 5 minutes. Unless it was a desperate moment, Yue Zhong would not resort to that. After killing another 3 pterosaurs with ease, Yue Zhong spoke into the communicator. "How many more soldiers are not yet here?" Bai replied swiftly. "Based on scans, there are still 4,325 signs of life inside the fort. There's no way to reach them through the communication channels. They must have abandoned their helmets. There's still 53% energy left. Please insert more nuclei." Yue Zhong chuckled bitterly. In order to maintain the combat strength of the Storm battleship, he had given half of Shui Luo Fort's storage. He did not expect it to last for barely an hour, and 47% had already been depleted. With a resolute glint, he gave the order, "Set off now. Head for the Imperial capital." Although there were still 4,000 human elites within the fort, if they continued like this, the hundreds of thousands on the ship would fall at the hands of the Dino warriors. In comparing the two, Yue Zhong made a helpless decision. Understood. With Yue Zhong's order, the battleship glowed and immediately utilized the fire net. All the Dino warriors within a 300 m radius were instantly wiped out. From within the battleship, an immense alloy armor quickly covered the ship. Next, the battleship began to rise amidst powerful jets of flames and air before it shot towards the distance. Seeing it fly away, Emperor Ba Long roared out with a maddened expression, "Damn it! They're getting away! Chase after them!" Yue Zhong's god and devil imprint, as well as the god-devil nucleus he had congealed, were important ingredients for Emperor Ba Long to evolve. Seeing the prey that was almost in his hands get away, Emperor Ba Long was obviously enraged. Following his orders, countless Dino warriors quickly got on their pterosaurs as they soared into the air and chased after the Storm battleship. Emperor Ba Long was clear that their speed could not match up with the battleship, but in his rage, he gave such an order. He stared at the Shui Luo fort with a venomous look and snapped, "Damn it! Tear this damn fort apart." If it was not for the huge amount of explosives within the forts, Emperor Ba Long would have long since charged through himself, killing every single human soldier cleanly. Yue Zhong would not have been able to get away scot-free as well. 20,000 armored rat warriors charged through the fort, tearing everything apart in a frenzy. The rest of the Dino warriors also breached the fort, chasing the battleship further towards Cloud Region. At that moment, when half of the fort was torn apart, a huge explosion occurred, enveloping those 20,000 armored rat warriors and annihilating them. Chapter 922, Emperor Ba Long's Tactics. Chapter 922, Emperor Ba Long's Tactics. As the dust from the explosion settled, where the 20th Shui Luo fort used to be, there was only a huge ditch. The forts that had stood as the final defense for the human race in the past hundreds of years had finally fallen. The moment the last fort was destroyed, the Dino army immediately poured into Cloud Region in huge droves, spreading out like wildfire. The Cloud Region was incredibly vast, with countless humans living in all sorts of areas, cities, even in villages. These were all areas where the government could not reach. The moment the Dino warriors invaded Cloud Region, they began to slaughter these straggling human bases without mercy. At a camp which was filled with Dino warriors, dozens of human males were being dragged away by 4 low-grade Dino-Generals. Inside the camp, a number of Type 6 Dino-Generals were seated, exuding a terrifying aura. They stared at the humans coldly, and the leader among the humans, who was a handsome man, was so badly frightened that his face turned pale and he slumped to the floor. A putrid liquid came out between his pants as he stammered, "Don't kill me. Don't kill me. As long as you spare my dog life, I'm willing to do anything." Seeing the pathetic state of the man, the various high-grade Dino-Generals had disdain in their eyes. They admired and respected heroes and experts. As to these humans without a backbone, they viewed them with contempt. On the throne, Emperor Ba Long was clouded with a black energy, coldly asking, "What's your name? Where are you from?" The young man felt his heart jumped and quickly replied, "I'm Luo Yi, one of the direct heirs of the Blood Red City's Luo clan, the future Viscount." Emperor Ba Long continued, "Luo Yi, I'll ask you this. Where's the Imperial capital of your Cloud Region?" Luo Yi hurried to answer, "The capital is in the Imperial City. I know how to go. Leave me alive. I'm willing to serve your majesty with all my heart." Emperor Ba Long looked down at Luo Yi condescendingly and declared, "Very good, Luo Yi. I can spare your life. As long as you swear to serve this seat, I will support you to become the king of the human race." Luo Yi immediately kneeled in joy and began kowtowing as he swore, "Thank you, your majesty. Thank you, your majesty. I, Luo Yi, swear to the heavens that I will serve his majesty Emperor Ba along with all my life, till the day I die." The Dino race was the dominant power in this world. Any Dino kingdom could easily crush all the fighting forces within Cloud Region. The Cloud Region had remained safe all these years purely because of the Shui Luo 20 forts. The Dino kingdoms also had their own friction among themselves. Those Dino kings were never interested in Cloud Region. Hence, the humans had been able to survive for so long. Now that the 20 forts had fallen, the Cloud Region no longer had a defense force that could stand up to any of the Dino armies. With their strength, they could capture hundreds of thousands of humans as their slaves with ease. To Luo Yi, being a king of 100,000 was already more than enough for him. Emperor Ba Long eyed Luo Yi coldly and spoke, "You're dismissed. Those humans who were captured along with you are now your subjects. Go settle them yourself." Luo Yi bowed respectfully, "Yes," before leaving. One of the Type 6 Velociraptor warrior could not help but ask, "Your Majesty, why did you let that human become a king? Isn't it easier for us to just make them all slaves, or eat them directly?" The rest of the Type 6 Dino-Generals had the same look of agreement as their gazes fell upon Emperor Ba Long. After this cruel battle with the Shui Luo 20 forts, many of their kingdoms had suffered heavy losses. They were filled with hatred for the humans, some directly killing the humans when they encountered them. Emperor Ba Long's eyes flashed with a glint. No, this time, the enemy we're facing is not simple. He might be the most dangerous enemy we have had to face, It is a test for our Dino race, as well as a potential catastrophe. If we can get past this, our race will then soar to greater heights. If not, what awaits us is likely our downfall. One Type 6 Dino-General frowned as he asked, albeit with a lost expression, "Enemy? How can those humans be our enemy? Unless they're the apostles of God." Hearing that term, all the Type 6 Dino-Generals had a huge change in expression, their pupils narrowing. As the victors of the previous war, the Dino race got to know a lot of secrets. They were extremely clear that while they were the overlords of this planet, their fate was still in the hands of this mighty existence far beyond their understanding. Yue Zhong was a man of the God and devil imprint, which was recognized as a sign of an apostle of God. Each of them was the elite among the humans, and they were difficult experts to deal with. In the past, their race had come to blows with one such being before. However, this was a matter over hundreds of years ago. Since then, the Dino race had not paid much attention to the humans. Emperor Ba Long's eyes flashed with a crafty glint as he laughed coldly. "That's right. He's an apostle of God. All of you had better abandon all thoughts of underestimating your opponent and use all of your might to deal with those humans. Humans are a pathetic bunch. As long as we can utilize them properly, they can fall apart from within easily. Dealing with scattered humans would then be easier. By the time we have finished dealing with the apostle of God, we can then deal with the rest of humankind however we want." Inside the capital, Chuntai was leading a patrol unit of a dozen guards, keeping an eye atop the city wall. He looked out over the wall, noticing that there was a long queue of humans, stretching for about 20 li. They were all moving out towards the mountain valley containing the Gate of Hell. His eyes flashed with worry and unease. This was a huge, unprecedented move, leaving behind this world that had lived in for dozens of years. Fleeing to another foreign world, there was no way he could not be uneasy and worried. Right at this moment, one city guard looked up and his face fell. Pointing to the sky, he exclaimed, "General, look, what's that?" Shintai lifted his head and was shocked. He discovered a huge floating fortress that blocked out a huge patch of the sky, descending towards the ground. Many soldiers got nervous and wielding their weapons to aim at the huge storm battleship. Suddenly, Yue Zhong projection appeared in various displays throughout the city. "This is Yue Zhong. I'm on the storm battleship, one of our trump cards. It's His Majesty. Storm battleship? Isn't that a frickin' floating fortress? That's amazing. With such a fortress, we don't have to fear to lose a home." From within the city walls, the people began to erupt in cheers and excited discussion. Shintai looked at the battleship with a look of relief. It truly is something only His Majesty is capable of. Yue Zhong walked out of the battleship and went into the capital, summoning all the officers. He swept everyone a gaze before asking Domeng directly, "Domeng, what's the situation on the ground now?" Domeng replied, "Based on the current number of humans in the capital that are going through the Gate of Hell, it would likely be completed in 5 days. Yue Zhong frowned and asked, 5 days, it's truly too long. Is there any way to expedite it? There was over a few thousand kilometers to the capital from the Yue Luo forts. If it was a journey for humans without any transportation, it would be hard to complete the journey even in a half a year. However, to those Dino warriors, it would take them a few days. If they did not rest and just hurried all the way, it was possible to reach in 1 day. Domeng did not answer that question. Instead, he asked, "Your Majesty, has the Yue Luo fort truly fallen?" The rest of the officers also turned to look at Yue Zhong. They had already known of the results of the battle, but they wanted to obtain the information directly from Yue Zhong's mouth. Yue Zhong replied softly, "It has already fallen. Based on our estimations, 16 Dino kingdoms had taken part in the attack on us, with more than one Type 6 Dino-General. In the end, our forts have fallen." Hearing the report, everyone's face was downcast. The Yue Luo forts had never fallen since they were constructed and were the strongest shield of the human race. However, now that it had fallen under the relentless assault of the true might of the Dino race, these people were rocked. Domeng looked as though he had aged 5 or 6 years and sighed. Your Majesty, 5 days is already the fastest that we can go. No matter what, you'll have to hold out for 5 days. Yue Zhong fell silent and nodded. All right, I will go try my best to fight for 5 more days. After the meeting was dismissed, Yue Zhong walked out quietly, a tremendous pressure on him. The lives and deaths of hundreds of thousands of people was not a small matter. He had not walked very far when he came across Luo Qingqing, who was in her Type 5 battle suit, walking towards him. She gazed at him and could tell that something was wrong, something troubling you. Yue Zhong chuckled bitterly. 5 days, I have to buy them 5 more days worth of time. How am I going to do that? Luo Qingqing's brows arched. Yue Zhong, this isn't like you. No matter what happened in the past, you had never been down at all. Since it's going to be hard to defend for 5 days, why not seize this chance to launch an attack? Chapter 923, Counterattack. Chapter 923, Counterattack. Attack. When Yue Zhong heard these words, his eyes suddenly lit up, and the fog seemed to clear from his eyes. Yue Zhong had always been a person who preferred to be on the offensive. However, due to the battle at the Shui Luo forts being a defensive one, and the numbers of the Dino warriors being too many, his mindset had never been on the offensive, since it would mean death. However, the situation was different now. The Shui Luo fort had already fallen, with many Dino warriors now spread out in Cloud region to slaughter the humans. No matter how big their numbers, when scattered throughout the vast Cloud region, it would be impossible to reform and gather into that terrifying army outside the fort. This was the only chance for the humans to retaliate. Yue Zhong had just evacuated from the Shui Luo forts and had always been on the defense. Thus, he had forgotten about the possibility of being on the offense. He was still human, after all, not an omnipotent god. His eyes had a different glint in them now, and Luo Qingqing, whose image was already radiant in his eyes, became even more dazzling. Thank you, truly. Luo Qingqing laughed coyly. I can help to lead a troop and attack those damn lizards. Yue Zhong's heart immediately relaxed a lot more. I'll have to trouble you then. Before turning to his communicator, by support Luo Qingqing fully. Make sure she gets the resources she needs. Zheng Yin, he was an outstanding defensive general. He knew the forts like the back of his hand. As for Luo Qingqing, she was termed as the Storm Queen. With her heaven-defying talents, she had been born to battle. Her combat abilities were extraordinary, and she adapted best in battle. She laughed brightly in response, before turning around with a valiant aura and left, leaving Yue Zhong to gaze at her beautiful back. As the Storm Queen, Luo Qingqing's position was similar to Yue Zhong. She naturally would not be in a subservient position, unlike his subjects. Yue Zhong admired her leaving back for a while before his gaze turned resolute, and he left for the outdoor with big strides. Soon, for fully equipped troops of 10,000 men charged out from the capital, galloping for the different parts of Cloud region. Although Yue Zhong had rescued over 100,000 elite soldiers from the Shui Luo fort, most of them had been through many days of the unending assault. They were exhausted and needed the rest. The capital also required many soldiers to guard. Thus, Yue Zhong could only deploy about 40,000 soldiers. Humans and Dino warriors were vastly different. The human soldiers required strict military training over a period of time to produce elite soldiers, whereas the foreign races had combat already in their DNA. The moment they matured, they were powerful warriors already. Inside a village, where there were only rice and vegetable fields, a number of old farmers were going about their activities, while kids were playing out in the sun. The housewives were sewing clothes for their families, and had a picturesque feel of a loving and warm village. All of a sudden, a number of Velociraptor warriors jumped out of forest near the village, their eyes bloodshot. What is that? One farmer saw the sudden appearance of the Velociraptor warrior and could not help himself but take a step closer. Inside Cloud region, Due to the hundreds of years of peace, the ordinary people had never seen the foreign races before. The eyes of the three Velociraptor warriors flashed dangerously. With a single leap, one disappeared from where he was and reappeared in front of the farmer, chomping down viciously. At that instant, the farmer had huge chunks of flesh torn from him, fresh blood splattering everywhere. Monsters! The rest of the farmers felt their hair stand at this horrific scene and screamed as they fled in various directions. The rest of the Velociraptors also quickly disappeared and charged right into the village. Screams soon echoed out as blood splattered everywhere. The village was soon turned into hell as the Velociraptor warriors tore into the humans. Outside the village, over hundreds and thousands of Velociraptors were charging for this human village. The Velociraptor warriors were naturally smaller in stature and their hind legs powerful, thus their speed was insane. Each time they attacked, it would be in droves and relying on their packs to hunt. They could only use such tactics to keep up with those larger and stronger Tyranno warriors. Attack! A cold order rang out, and immediately beams of light shot out from various angles, blasting the Velociraptor warriors. Faced with this sudden ambush, many Velociraptors screamed out and turned around, intending to pounce towards those soldiers. Unfortunately, the relentless beams turned many of them into sieves, their bodies crumpling to the ground. After paying the price of hundreds of deaths, the remaining Velociraptor warriors managed to charge into the camp. At this moment, Luo Qingqing appeared, decked in her Type 5 battle suit, single-handedly charging into their midst with her battle spear. Each time her spear lit up, the heads of the Velociraptor warriors would blow up, fresh blood dyeing the ground. Luo Qingqing was like a Valkyrie standing her ground, and any Velociraptor warrior that charged at her would be taken down without fail. Not a single one could cross her line. After half an hour, this unit of 500 Velociraptor warriors were all wiped out, leaving blood and dismembered corpses all over the ground. High she stepped over the dead bodies, reporting, "Your Majesty, there are no more survivors inside the village. Let's go." Luo Qingqing sighed, turning around to leave. Countless soldiers followed, heading for the next point. At another part of Cloud Region, within the Leishi city, there were charred black bodies of Dino warriors, as a unit of mech fighters were cleaning up the battlefield. Yue Zhong stood outside the city, looking at the corpse, frowning deeply. He had led this army of mech fighters to annihilate a 10,000-strong army of Dino warriors, but the rest of them were still pushing on slowly on the capital. There did not seem to be any effect on them. Even with Yue Zhong going on a massacre, it did not affect the main Dino army. If a unit of 10,000 humans were wiped out, it would be a disaster. But to the alliance of 16 Dino kingdoms, that number was nothing. Emperor Ba Long also did not employ any particularly deep strategy. He just intended to use the sheer force of his military might to push towards the capital. This was a simple but effective tactic. Yue Zhong was already outnumbered, and there was no risk to this particular method. No, if this goes on, not to mention one day, we can't even drag it out for an hour. Yue Zhong frowned and stepped over the blood-red ground, deep in thoughts. All right, with their numbers, their food consumption must be astronomical. Even with the battle and consuming their comrades' corpses, there has to be some sort of supply. All of a sudden, Yue Zhong's eyes brightened. His body flashed as he hurried back towards the command center and asked by E, "Help me check if the Dino army has some form of logistic support." Although they had retreated, in order to gain intel, Yue Zhong had released numerous electronic flies and dragonflies, as well as other minuscule robotic life forms, as by Yi's eyes and ears throughout the region. It was because of them that Yue Zhong could accurately grasp the direction which the Dino army was moving and avoid their main force, hunting the smaller units. Understood. Upon receiving Yue Zhong's order, Bai Yi's eyes flashed with data, swiftly performing her calculations. The numerous robotic life forms throughout Cloud Region were quickly activated and flew out to gather the information. He then swiftly projected out a display in front of Yue Zhong. We've discovered the location of the logistics. Yue Zhong saw the display and finally heaved a sigh of relief. That's great. We can finally cause those buggers some trouble. With that, the mech fighters immediately moved out under Yi's control, quickly searching for the next target to eliminate. Yi had her own sentience, and as long as Yue Zhong gave the order, she would be able to control the mech fighters to search for Dino warriors to hunt automatically. If it was not for the necessity to guard the capital, allowing for a wide-scale evacuation, Yue Zhong would definitely throw all the mech fighters into the fray and hunt the Dino warriors. About 50 kilometers south of the Shui-Luo forts, a number of huge Diplodocuses were dragging mountain-like vehicles behind them. There were 80,000 Velociraptor warriors on their mounts, riding alongside the procession, eyeing their surroundings warily. This procession was about a few kilometers long, looking extremely ferocious. There were also 15 mid-grade Dino-Generals among them. Out on the field, no other force could possibly be a match for this unit. As this was at the back of all the forces, and due to their large numbers, the Dino warriors could not help but relax a little, without the intention to search. Behind a sand dune, Yue Zhong looked at the passing army and ordered coldly, "Do it!" All of a sudden, clouds of dust rolled by, and 500 tanks escorted by 6,000 soldiers on enhanced motorcycles appeared. Chapter 924, Annihilating 80,000 Velociraptor Warriors. Chapter 924, Annihilating 80,000 Velociraptor Warriors. The 500 tanks began to fire, with multiple bursts of light. The impact and explosions Dino warriors and blasted many of them apart. Enemy attack! Enemy attack! A sharp scream rang out among the Velociraptor warriors. The Velociraptors on their mounts did not panic when being attacked. Instead, their eyes turned bloodshot, and they urged their mounts forward as they howled out in rage, charging towards the 500 energy tanks. The difference between these Velociraptor warriors and humans were that they were ferocious and savage in nature. Even when attacked, they would not lose their morale and flee. The running speed of those Velociraptors was extremely fast, reaching the sound barrier. Even with the Velociraptor warrior riding on them, their speed exceeded those bulky energy tanks with their thick hulls and defense. 80,000 Velociraptor warriors joined hands to launch an assault. Such a number was extremely terrifying. The Velociraptor warriors had claws 30 cm long, and they could easily tear through the hulls of the energy tanks. Even if there were 500 of them, when faced with these Velociraptor warriors, their outcome would be being torn apart. The laser vehicles around the tanks also began to fire out multiple beams, killing numerous Velociraptor warriors. However, it did little to impede their advance. Right at this time, Yue Zhong stepped forward in front of everybody. With a thought, he channeled the summoned Tame Beast skill, and a huge tear appeared in midair. The monstrous Type 5 Mount Tai stepped out, shocking everybody. The moment Mount Tai appeared, with a huge flick of its powerful and large tail, it swept into the Velociraptor warriors, directly smashing many of them into meat pulp. Due to the sudden strike, two Type 5 Velociraptor warriors had not enough time to react from their charge, and were thus flattened as well, dying miserable deaths. After killing over 100 Dino warriors with a single blow, Mount Tai then charged forward. As it galloped, its huge tail would swing from left to right, smashing numerous Dino warriors into meat paste. When the Velociraptor warriors slammed into Mount Tai's body, they were like eggs smashed against rocks, bursting apart, or being crushed underneath it. More and more of them were being smashed by Mount Tai, while the remaining that got past, they were taken out by the energy tanks and laser-mounted vehicles. One Type 5 Velociraptor warrior roared out, "Type 5 Mutant Beast! It is a Type 5 Mutant Beast! Get some distance and finish it!" A single Type 5 Mutant Beast was terrifying enough to wipe out a battalion by itself, but it was not without any weaknesses. Most of the time, it was the lack of intelligence. The other was that huge Type 5 mutant beast usually lost out in the speed department. Your chance is over. At the moment the Type 5 Velociraptor warrior was preparing to retreat, Yue Zhong appeared right in front of him in all his Type 5 battle suit and Dark Do Chi, sending a powerful punch towards him. The Type 5 Velociraptor warrior had no way of sensing Yue Zhong in his third-order stealth, and when faced with this sudden strike, he was caught unprepared and the fist smashed into his head. Pump! Following a loud boom, the head of the Type 5 Velociraptor warrior burst open, fresh blood spraying everywhere. A huge amount of life force entered Yue Zhong's body. Noting that he had killed the Type 5 Velociraptor with a single hit, Yue Zhong felt excited. I've truly become stronger once again. Although the Type 5 Velociraptor warrior was one of the weaker dino races, to humans, they were still a frightening existence. Yet, such a freak was killed by Yue Zhong in a hit. Thus, he relished in the reality of his enhanced strength. Damn human, you dare to kill our men. I will tear you apart limb from limb. Another Type 5 Velociraptor warrior roared with rage, and with a tap of his foot, the ground beneath him split. He disappeared from his location, wrapped with white radiance of life, as he tried to slash at Yue Zhong. Foul creature, scram for me. Yue Zhong channeled his Dark Do Chi, and with a bellow of rage, his fist shot out like thunder, smashing into the claws of the Type 5 Velociraptor. With the enhancement of the 5th Order Dark Do Chi, Yue Zhong's fist could topple even mountains. The Type 5 Velociraptor warrior had the bones in his arm broken at the point of contact, blood flowing down from his shoulder. He yelped in shock and disbelief. How is this possible? You're just a human. How can your strength possibly be greater than mine? Among experts of the same realm, humans were considered the weakest. This was common knowledge among the foreign races, and the Type 5 Velociraptor warrior could not believe that he would be at the short end of this exchange. Yue Zhong's eyes flashed with a fierce glint, shooting forward and sending another fist at the Type 5 Velociraptor warrior, smashing his head like a watermelon. Beast, go ask your questions down in hell. With the death of the Type 5 Velociraptor warrior, another bout of life force flowed into Yue Zhong through the god and devil imprint. Yue Zhong felt like an undefeatable war god now, and he directly charged into the midst of the Velociraptor warriors and started a massacre. 7 Type 4 Velociraptor warriors tried to surround Yue Zhong. With a flash of his body, he transformed into a beam of light that shot past the 7 of them. In an instant, their chests all erupted in showers of blood, and their corpses crumpled to the ground. Another Type 5 Velociraptor warrior rushed at Yue Zhong with an unresigned fury. Unfortunately, in a few breaths, he had been killed with his body mangled, and his life force absorbed by Yue Zhong. Yue Zhong's speed was truly terrifying, and his speed of killing was even more so. Before the Type 5 Velociraptor warriors could react, he had already reached most of them and directly obliterated them with his fists. One-on-one, Yue Zhong could now easily kill a Type 5 Velociraptor warrior. However, dealing with 3 of them at the same time would still be dangerous. Mount Tai continued to rampage through the horde of Velociraptor warriors, scattering the army. In the midst of the chaos, Yue Zhong continued to take out the Type 5 Velociraptor warriors. After dozens of them had been killed by Yue Zhong, there were no more entities left to threaten the Type 5 Mount Tai. It continued to smash around unhindered, flattening many of the lower-rank Velociraptor warriors into meat paste. Behind Mount Tai, the 500 energy tank, as well as the laser-mounted vehicles, also blasted out with their weapons, taking out the Velociraptor warriors at a rapid pace. At the same time, Mount Tai suddenly let out a powerful roar, which instigated the other Diplodocuses that had been used as carriage beasts to turn on their old masters. They charged right at them, stepping on them and smashing the helpless Velociraptor warriors with their tails. The intense battle continued for 3 hours, and the initial 80,000-strong army was reduced to barely a few thousand. The rest of them had been killed. On Yue Zhong's side, he had lost 20 energy tanks, 500 laser-mounted motorcycles, Mount Tai had also suffered multiple injuries, with claw marks everywhere. However, under its powerful regeneration, the wounds quickly healed. After wiping out this 80,000-strong army, Yue Zhong came to the huge carriages pulled by those Diplodocuses. He tore off the simple cloth cover from one of them. Within the carriage, there were multiple stacks of dried mutant beast meat. On top of that, there were also thousands of human and other foreign races' corpses. Evidently, these would be used to feed the mutant beasts that the Dino warriors reared. Yue Zhong scanned through the supplies carefully, noting many of the corpses had broken limbs and mangled bodies. They were likely the bodies from the battle at the Luo forts. These foreign races and vassal forces were merely rations to the cruel Dino warriors. As they opened up the rest, they discovered even more corpses of the foreign races. It was a chilling sight. Burn them all. Under Yue Zhong's orders, the carriages were set on fire, and the huge amount of food supplies were turned to ashes. Just then, Xiao Yun came up to Yue Zhong excitedly. "Leader, we discovered some things inside the carriages in front. This is a Type 6 nuclei. This is some data." After Yue Zhong opened the box, he discovered that there was a Type 6 nuclei within, as well as a memory unit. Yue Zhong plugged the memory unit into a handheld computer and asked this should be something good. Bai Yi, can you scan and tell me what is stored in here? Bai Yi's eyes flashed with data before replying swiftly, "There's a blueprint for the design of the human combat suit within. It is an advanced blueprint design from the God and Devil system, and all the combat suits we have seen are simple, crude versions of the original prototype. If we can manufacture this advanced battle suit according to the designs, it can accept any nuclei of Type 9 and below. However, there's a flaw in the suit. That is, there has to be a suitable user with at least 80% compatibility. Otherwise, there is no way to utilize the suit in combat." Chapter 925, The Battle at Imperial Capital. Chapter 925, The Battle at Imperial Capital. When Yue Zhong heard this, he frowned. Compatibility requirements. No wonder it was simplified. To humans, an equipment that could be manufactured and used on a large scale was the best thing. If there was no way to utilize it, then there was no use in producing a powerful equipment. Yue Zhong asked Bai Yi, "With our current technology, are we able to manufacture this?" Bai Yi replied, "If we can bring all the technology back from the capital to Earth, we will be able to produce such an equipment. If we were to use what is available on Earth, then it would take at least 20 years to produce this battle suit." Yue Zhong could not help but be overjoyed at his opportunity to come to the Third World. As long as he could bring them all to Earth successfully, his faction on Earth would gain a huge boon. "Let's set off. Our battle is not yet over." Yue Zhong kept the Type 6 nucleus carefully before leading the army further to attack the reinforcements and back support of the Dino army. About 1,000 kilometers away from the Imperial city in Cloud region, there was a huge camp set up. Within one of the tents, all the upper echelons of the Dino army had gathered, facing the tyrannical and oppressive Emperor Balong. One Type 6 Dino-General reported to Emperor Balong, "Your Majesty, we have suffered an ambush from the humans, and our back end has lost over 150,000 soldiers, as well as numerous supplies. Based on the current reserves we have, we can only last for another 3 more days. After that, we will have no more food." The Dino warriors were incredibly savage and ferocious, but required a huge amount of food as well. One can only imagine the food requirement for an army over 1 million in size. It was because of this that the Dino race had prepared for so long and gathered supplies before launching an assault on the Luo forts, successfully crushing them. After successfully invading Cloud region, many of them scattered and began to hunt the humans and other life forms in order to lighten the pressure. Emperor Balong replied coldly, 3 days? I've been careless. To think the humans would have such guts to attack us." Another Type 6 Dino-General asked, "Your Majesty, should we stop the advance?" Emperor Balong shook his head and spoke coldly. "Kong Lai Feng, Go take your troops and push your vassal forces towards the capital. Kong Yi Sun, Kong Hui, Kong Bao Xian, the three of you shall lead 500,000 units back and wipe out those damn humans. Protect our supplies. The rest of the units shall hunt freely for a day. Yes, under his orders, the Dino army mobilized and moved out in different directions. Near the Luo fort, there were multiple blazes as numerous carriages were set aflame and burnt to ashes. They finally moved. Yue Zhong saw the incoming Dino army and frowned. Any number of troops diverted away from the main force to deal with Yue Zhong's supply hunting troops would mean less pressure at the capital. It's time to retreat as well. Bye. Yue Zhong barked out lowly, and the huge storm battleship came swooping down. The hundreds of energy tanks and thousands of laser-mounted vehicles quickly boarded the battleship. Soon, the battleship rose into the air again and made for the direction of the Imperial capital. A part of the enemy's forces had been diverted to protect the supplies line. Yue Zhong's objective had been met. He had to refocus his efforts in defending the capital now. As long as he could hold out for another 3 days, it would be his victory. Since a huge portion of their resources had been destroyed, the Dino warriors on the back end could not sit still any longer. Over hundreds of thousands of Dino warriors were already on their way towards the back, led by Type 6 Dino-Generals. If Yue Zhong wanted to defeat the enemy, it would require a painful price. Outside the capital, numerous foreign races warriors were charging with bloodlust at the capital, under the influence of the war drums. The city wall of the capital had been commissioned by Wei Ming-Qing, built with countless resources and wealth. Its defense was even more powerful than the Luo forts. However, due to the civil war, the wall had already suffered some damage. Many areas had been blasted wide open by the energy missiles, and even the Raytheon cannon had fired shot at it. Therefore, the defense was much weaker now. Even so, the city wall was still equipped with countless automated weapons, as well as prism laser cannons. Under the relentless attacks of the lasers and cannons, droves of foreign soldiers were blasted apart. These are the foreign soldiers that breached the Luo forts? Truly terrifying. His Majesty and the rest have been battling against these monsters. On the city wall, Lu Tai looked at all these aggressive monsters that had no care for their own lives and felt a chill in his heart. If it had been the human race, the moment the casualty rate reached 30%, they would have lost their fighting spirit and morale. However, these vassal forces were different. Unless they died in battle, they would be attacking relentlessly. The battle at the capital was different from that at the Luo fort. Among the huge numbers of foreign soldiers, many fearsome Dino warriors were mixed in as well. Each of the Dino warriors was wielding human-made electromagnetic cannons, laser guns, and energy weapons to attack. They fired continuously at the automatic defenses. After the Dino warriors breached the 20 Luo forts, they had looted numerous weapons and equipment from the human corpses and forts. Having a certain level of intelligence, they swiftly learned how to utilize the weapons and use them against the human soldiers. Multiple beams fired out from the foreign forces, targeting the automatic weapons on the city wall. At the same time, from a distance away, some Type 5 expert appeared with powerful-looking bows and arrows, firing out the arrows at the city wall as well. Numerous prism laser cannons extended out from the city wall, firing out at the Type 5 experts, blowing them up. Huge droves of pterosaurs, Archaeopteryx, as well as Sinosauropteryx that had grown wings soared through the skies, bearing Dino warriors on their backs. Among them, many of them had the ability to control the wind, and countless wind blades were summoned and shot out at the prism laser cannons. Under the assault of the wind blades, many of the prism laser cannons were directly smashed and turned into rubble. At the same time, the Dino warriors atop the mounts leaped down from the skies, directly charging to the top of the city walls, trying to destroy everything. This time, the Dino army were throwing all their forces into the fray from the get-go. Due to their attacks, many of the automatic defenses and mech fighters were destroyed. Even human soldiers hiding behind cover were not spared, with over 500 casualties. In the evening, the assault had not yet stopped, braving the hundreds of energy cannons and rocket launchers to mount another volley of attacks. In front of the capital city wall, the beams illuminated the skies, with rockets and missiles exploding every once in a while. The energy cannons also fired without stop, shooting the aerial beast down. Hundreds and thousands of foreign races and Dino warriors had perished since the start of the battle, with their corpses littered all over the ground in front of the city wall. The battle continued through the night before daylight finally broke. Behind their cover, Lu Tai's eyes were bloodshot as he eyed the never-ending droves of foreign soldiers and Dino warriors, and shock filled his heart. Is this the battle tactic of the Dino army? Truly fearsome. His Majesty and the rest had to fend this off for more than a month. Unbelievable. After just one day of such a cruel and intense battle, the human soldiers were all exhausted, their mental state stretched. Their combat efficiency also dropped drastically. Fighting against those monsters, they did not even have a sliver of time to rest. The moment they let up, those foreign soldiers would be able to breach past the fire net and reach the wall, destroying anything they could. Zheng Yan, he was experienced and well-prepared. The moment there was sunlight, he quickly assigned 10,000 new troops to the battlefield, taking over the exhausted ones. If things go on like this, we should be able to hold out for 2 days. At a high location within the capital, Yue Zhong was wielding his electromagnetic cannon, firing and killing Dino warriors with every single shot. He eyed the waves of foreign soldiers and heaved a sigh. As long as they could hold out for another 2 days, then all the citizens of the Imperial City would finish transferring into the Second World. At that time, it did not matter if they had to give up the Imperial City. At the moment that Yue Zhong heaved a sigh of relief, he suddenly heard a sharp howl from the direction of the Dino warriors. Instantly, all the Dino warriors began to retreat. Yue Zhong looked at them with suspicion and doubt. What's going on? With the powerful defenses of the Imperial City, if they didn't send out a Type 7 expert, it was impossible to breach the city in 2 days. Even then, Yue Zhong could utilize the Storm battleship to fire the Raytheon cannon to heavily injure the Type 7 expert. However, to think that they actually called for a sudden retreat, Yue Zhong could not help but worry. Chapter 926, The Seeds of Division. Chapter 926, The Seeds of Division. The Dino warriors had not retreated far behind when there was a movement from their ranks as they split in the middle. A number of humans walked out with projectors. Then the beams shot out, forming a 10 tall image of Luo Yi. Luo Yi spoke loudly. What do you do, people? I'm Luo Yi, the new king of Cloud Country that Emperor Ba Long has kindly appointed. As long as everybody can fulfill Emperor Ba Long's single condition, His Majesty is willing to leave Cloud Region and sign a peace treaty with us. Luo Yi's voice resounded from the various amplifying equipment, traveling in all directions. All the soldiers within the city heard the words, and everyone jolted. The Dino warriors and their vassal forces were extremely strong. This was something all the human soldiers could see. Any single one of them could tear apart dozens of the humans. Furthermore, humans were naturally fearful of death. Hence, they were unwilling to continue fighting. Luo Yi spoke. The great Emperor Ba Long has announced, as long as you guys hand over Yue Zhong to him, he will take Yue Zhong and leave with his troops. Yue Zhong, it's His Majesty. Hearing Luo Yi's words, all the soldiers on the city wall felt waves in their hearts. There were even some officers with strange thoughts at this moment. Within the capital, most of the guard were not exactly Yue Zhong's subordinates. Instead, most of them had been ex-captives that surrendered. They were naturally not loyal to him. Luo Yi continued to persuade. Listen to me, everybody. Yue Zhong is a disaster. The moment he came to our Cloud region, he slaughtered Emperor Wei Mingqing. Now, he attracted the Dino race here. As long as he turns himself in, our Cloud region would have a future. The great Emperor Ba Long has spoken. As long as you hand over Yue Zhong, everyone can live. If not, after they breach the city, none will be left alive. Luo barked. This time, in order to invade Cloud Region, there are a total of 27 Dino Kingdoms participating. We definitely cannot withstand this. Yue Zhong, if you are a man, you will step out to sacrifice yourself for the sake of. Before he could finish, Yue Zhong ordered with a cold look, destroy him. The prism laser cannons adjusted their aim, and in an instant, countless beams shot out, destroying the projector and equipment. Yue Zhong frowned deeply and sighed. Shit, I miscalculated. I thought I could buy time. Seems like things are going to become troublesome. The Dino race had always viewed humans as livestock to be killed. Any form of resistance was dealt with violently and swiftly. This had forced all the humans to band together to resist them. Now, they were actually resorting to a government, supporting some humans to form their own faction. By doing this, it would allow some of the weaker-willed people to have a choice in surrendering. This was a venomous tactic by Emperor Balong. By burying the seeds of doubt and division among the humans, when things reached a boiling point, some of them would then cease resisting. Some might even raise their weapons against their own kind in order to survive. After the projectors were destroyed, the human crowd split up, with numerous old people, women, and children carrying sandbags running forward towards the city wall. Open the gates! Save us, please! Help us! Please help us! Open the gates and let us in. Aren't we fellow humans? The humans who were forced towards the gates of the capital began to scream out as they rushed forward. Each of them was carrying many amplifiers, their shrill voices broadcasted throughout the city. Among these weak survivors running forwards, there were some Dino warriors mixed in. They were intending to use the humans as shields to launch an attack on the city wall, destroying the automated defenses. Beast! Shameless! They're too shameless! These damn beasts! Damn it! Damn it! These motherfuckers! Within the wall, the human soldiers witnessed this, and their eyes turned bloodshot, their fists clenched. They were filled with incomparable grief and indignation, but were helpless at the same time. Facing those frail old people, weak and skinny women, as well as the innocent and immature children, the Iron Blood warriors were unable to make a move. They were afraid that if their hands trembled, they might accidentally open fire on them. On the wall, Yue Zhong's eyes were also bloodshot, his killing intent soaring through the roof. He sent out a punch at the wall. Beasts! Although his strength had reached the peak of Type 5, in this situation, there were limitations to what he could do. Inside the command center, Zheng Yin, he looked at the humans out there being treated as cannon fodder and sighed in sadness. His eyes flashed with a momentary pain before they regained their resolution, and he ordered the only logical order they could: fire. Under Zheng Yin's order, the energy cannons that had stopped fired out once more. Under that relentless volley, many of the humans and Dino warriors alike were blasted into smithereens. The mech fighters and automated weapons began to fire as well. Countless beams fired upon the group below, killing both the humans and Dino warriors. Beast, flee! When the human soldiers saw how their fellow men have blown apart under the merciless firepower, their gazes were filled with sorrow as they cried out. It was not because they were not brave, but because they had compassion and were helpless. Cloud Region had enjoyed peace for countless years. This battle had opened the eyes of these soldiers to the cruelty of war once again. In the Dino army camp, Emperor Balong saw the group of humans and Dino warriors obliterated and sighed. Did we fail? Those humans defending are truly hard to deal with. If Zheng Yin had allowed them to get close because of pity or sympathy, then the Dino warriors would be able to clear the city wall with greater ease. When that happens, Emperor Balong would then make use of his overwhelming advantage in numbers to steamroll over the defense. The intense battle continued for another day, and the exhausted soldiers were swapped out, and another batch of soldiers was deployed in their place. When those soldiers retreated, Luo Yi's words were also passed around. Inside a meeting room, the four leaders of the great clans gathered once more. Domeng spoke softly. What do you guys think? Zhao Zheng had a glint in his eyes. From Luo Yi's words, we can assume that the target of the Dino race is only Yue Zhong himself. If he was handed over, then after Emperor Balong gets what he wants, he should call off the assault. After all, with their strength and their combined forces, they should have already wiped us out long ago. Lu Yi fell silent before suddenly saying, "Shall we take this chance to take out Yue Zhong?" The moment his words came out, everyone fell silent. Although it seemed that Yue Zhong had gained control over all the military on the surface, the four great clans were, after all, longtime snakeheads of these parts. Their roots extended out far and wide. If they were to go all out, it was possible to incite a large-scale rebellion. Furthermore, there was the situation of the Dino army invasion. If the four great clans were to create trouble, their chances of success would not be small. Domeng pondered for a long while, before finally saying, "No, Yue Zhong is too strong. If we were to rebel now, our four great clans would only perish. Furthermore, the Dino race are a foreign race. After all, their savagery and viciousness know no boundaries. Who knows if they will keep their word? We should continue to help Yue Zhong and leave this world." The other three heads pondered and in the end agreed with Domeng's suggestion. With no strange movements from the four great clans, the rest of the people within the capital also continued to push forth the migration. After holding out for an entire day, Yue Zhong then deployed 150,000 mech fighters into the battle, replacing all the human soldiers, while conducting a large-scale evacuation for the human soldiers. Once all the human soldiers retreated, the capital was able to hold out for one more day before being destroyed by the Dino army. The outer city wall then exploded madly, consuming over 20,000 of the Dino warriors. By the time the explosion settled, the Dino army swiftly occupied the city and began their hunt for the humans. After 2 days, Emperor Ba Long appeared in the mysterious valley, staring at the ancient and primordial gate of hell with a fixed gaze. This is the gate of hell. They have already used this to leave this world. Emperor Ba Long's face fell as he reached out to grab at the gate. At the moment his right hand touched the gate, a black energy seeped out from the gate of hell and coiled around his right hand. In an instant, Emperor Ba Long's right hand suddenly seemed to have passed through 10,000 years, instantly withering and losing signs of life. In the end, it crumbled into dust. Emperor Ba Long's face turned, and he quickly retreated backward, looking warily at the gate of hell. The time is not yet ripe. Our race cannot pass through the gate of hell yet. However, it's soon. Once it opens, it cannot close. Yue Zhong, I will retrieve your head one day. Your god and devil imprint will be mine. Chapter 927, Ghost City. Chapter 927, Ghost City. It was bleak everywhere, without any signs of green. The sky was downcast, and there was no sunlight. This was the second world. Ghost City was an important interchange, with the human population reaching 300,000. At a particular arena within the city, over tens of thousands of people had gathered, their attention fixed on the center of the stage, shouting loudly. There was a human soldier wielding a huge axe, while facing him was a 3M, tall, irradiated devil, whose body was covered in boils and sharp, protruding bones. "Kill him! Kill! Kill! Kill!" Inside the arena, the screams and cheers of the people could be heard. The irradiated devil's eyes flashed with a vicious glint. With a tap of his food, he charged towards the human soldier with a bloodthirsty aura. The human was like an agile monkey, deftly routing to the side, successfully getting behind the irradiated devil. He then swung down viciously on the back of the monster, slicing apart his body, and a huge amount of black blood splattered out from the irradiated devil. With an enraged scream, the boils on his back began to burst, and dark, black pus landed on the face of the human soldier. The soldier's face was splattered with the pus, and immediately it began to corrode his face, causing multiple sizzling holes. Ah! The human soldier screamed out miserably, his hands grabbing his face as he thrashed about in pain and agony. At this time, the irradiated devil reached out with both hands, grabbing the human soldier, and pulled apart with a burst of strength. The human soldier was torn in two. Blood and innards spilled out everywhere, looking extremely gory. Haha, well done. Trash, to think I bet on you. Among the audience, some were screaming excitedly, while others cursed and swore, having bet on the outcome. Inside the VIP seating, there were a number of men within, as well as 7 or 8 extremely beautiful serving ladies. Other than the serving girls, there were 6 who were fair and adorable human girls, wearing extremely little. The beautiful serving girls were seated beside the men, while the 6 adorable little girls were smiling coyly and trying to please one particular young and handsome man. In his arms, there was a lowly with an impressive pair of breasts, and he was holding a glass of fresh blood, eyeing the cruel battlefield below. He laughed coldly. What an utter disgrace! These humans are truly lowly and despicable creatures. They're even excited at the deaths of their fellow humans. What a sight! A muscular black man gobbled up a plate full of blood and flesh as he muttered, "Humans are just our food source. As long as they taste good, it doesn't matter if their behavior is ugly or not." The blonde-haired man laughed lightly and did not say more. At this moment, 2 burly flesh-eaters dragged a voluptuous mixed-blood woman with beautiful features, dressed in black leather. The blonde-haired man raised his glass to the woman and laughed. "How you do? Snowstorm Queen Sima Bing. Pleased to meet you here." Sima Bing was radiating an icy aura as she snorted coldly. "Who are you?" "I'm one of the Saint Clan's ancestors, Vanatemps." He laughed lightly, as a powerful pressure that could seemingly kill a person enveloped her Sima Bing. Sima Bing's face fell as she exclaimed, "What? Type 5 ancestor?" Under the pressure for Vanatemps, Sima Bing felt suffocated. She was like a frog being stared at by a frog, her entire body plunged in cold. In the second world, a Type 5 expert was almost invincible. A single one could destroy an entire army. Such a freak was not something a Type 3 expert like Sima Bing could handle. Vanatemps then spoke in an alluring voice. "Sima Bing, I know that your position among the human resistance is high. As long as you surrender to us, I can help you turn into one of us. At the same time, you'll have a breakthrough to the Type 4 realm with an unlimited lifespan, as well as riches and power." Sima Bing's expression turned vicious as she spat a glob of saliva at his face. "Forget about it. I will never join you animals. I'm a human, not a freak like you monsters." Pah! Vanatemp's eyes flashed fiercely, and a blood-red beam shot out to disintegrate the saliva. His face turned dark as he waved his hands. "Bitch, you truly do not know when a toast is offered. Do it." The flesh-eater that was grabbing Sima Bing pulled out a red pill and directly squeezed her mouth open, forcing the pill in. The moment the pill entered her mouth, she felt a strange energy flowing through her limbs, and her breathing suddenly became haggard. Sima Bing looked at the savage, grinning expression of Vanatemps and gasped, "What did you feed me?" He laughed cruelly in response. "Don't you feel that you're a human? I'll not let you be one. You shall be a bitch instead." Ha ha! As he laughed cruelly, the expressions of the 6 adorable girls turned ugly, their bodies trembling. At that moment, 4 flesh-eaters brought in 4 huge, black dogs into the box. The 4 hounds had bloodshot expressions, panting excitedly, evidently having been fed something. The alluring Sima Bing had a clouded gaze, her eyes filled with an expectant look as she curled up on the ground, breathing raggedly, trying to fight back the effects of the medicine. Vanatemps laughed out maniacally. "Let us see how this human will copulate with dogs. Performing such perverse and degenerate acts, she dares to claim that she's a human? Ha! Sima Bing, if your comrades are to see your slutty side, What do you think they will feel? Vanitemps was an old freak that had survived many years. As a Type 5 ancestor, his position was high. He had enjoyed and reveled in all that was possible. Furthermore, the innate nature of the evolved zombie traits in him made him more cruel and sadistic. Under the torment of the medicine, Sima Bing's breathing became even more ragged, and she looked more like a drug abuser in cold turkey treatment, crawling helplessly towards those 4 dogs. Vanitemp's face was contorted in a savage expression, and he laughed twistedly. Ha ha ha! The human women within the room all looked away, unwilling to witness the depravity that was about to happen. At the moment that Sima Bing had reached the dogs, there was a loud blast, and the door to the room was blasted open. A number of blade shadows appeared inside the room, slashing up the 4 flesh-eaters and 4 dogs. In the blink of an eye, their bodies were sliced up into multiple pieces that splattered on the ground. Yue Zhong stepped in, wielding his Type 4 flame blade. Sima Bing's hands closed in on thin air, and her face flushed further as her eyes glazed over. She grabbed onto Yue Zhong, curling around him like a snake, moaning out in a manner that could cause one's heart to pump. Give me! Give me! I want it! Huh! Give me! Yue Zhong had been fighting on the front line these few days, fending off the elite Dino warriors. He had not even touched a woman for so long. Seeing Sima Bing in heat, he almost could not control himself as well. However, he was still a warlord, and he chopped down on her neck lightly, causing her to faint. The commotion at the door had drawn everyone's attention. Seeing the corpses, the women were all filled with fear, but no one screamed. After all, they had seen plenty of such scenes in this world. After all, when the cruel flesh-eaters and bloodsuckers went overboard in their fun, they would chop off the heads of the women they toyed with, drinking the blood. Yue Zhong, you are Yue Zhong. This is good. We've been searching for you for so long. Hand over the god and devil imprint on you. Vanitemp's eyes lit up when he saw Yue Zhong, laughing out in excitement. He threw the well-developed lowly to one side like trash, before disappearing from where he was and appeared in front of Yue Zhong in the next. He slashed out viciously at his head. Trash. Just based on you trash. Overestimating yourself. Yue Zhong's gaze turned cold, punching out with his fist wrapped in dark dough chi. The power of the dark dough chi exploded out, causing a huge hole in Vanitemp's body, while Vanitemps himself was sent soaring back into the wall. Chapter 928, Killing a Type 5 Ancestor. Chapter 928, Killing a Type 5 Ancestor. Seeing this terrifying scene, everyone within the room was stunned. Vanitemps was a Type 5 expert, and he could easily tear apart an RH2 with ease. Such an Overlord-class character was actually heavily injured in one hit. This caused everyone to fall into disbelief. How is this possible? You're just a human. How could you possess a Type 5 divine strength? I don't believe this. Vanitemps roared out in rage as he stepped out from the debris of the wall, his body covered with his radiance of life. At that instant, he turned into countless blood-sucking bats and pounced towards Yue Zhong. As part of the vampire clan, their bodies might not be as powerful as the Dino race. However, in terms of regenerative ability, speed, and mystical abilities, they were superior. Oomph. Scram for me. Yue Zhong snorted coldly, his body exuding an aura like a fiend god. He took a step forward and slashed outward at the bats. With the flash of his blade, many bats were sliced apart, turning into multiple pieces that fell out of the skies. When the other bats saw this, they flapped their wings frantically in a bid to flee. The bat's transformation skill was a secret defensive measure of the vampire clan. As long as a single one escaped, then even if the rest were killed, Vanitemps could resurrect. Of course, the more bats that were killed, the weaker Vanitemps would be after resurrecting. Yue Zhong, go to hell. Following a roar of rage, the other Type 4 experts of the Flesh Eater and Vampire clans acted, dashing towards Yue Zhong. Vanitemps took the chance to flee. The moment the Type 4 experts acted, a black shadow suddenly appeared and daggers flashed out. At that instant, bloody holes appeared in the chests of the experts, their hearts already crushed. The hearts and heads were the weak points of the flesh-eaters and vampires. The moment they were destroyed, then these Type 4 experts would also become corpses. You want to escape? Go to hell. Facing the fleeing bats, Yue Zhong sent out his devil flame at the various bats. In a flash of fire, the bats were reduced to ash. In the end, when a last bat was also incinerated, a powerful life force was absorbed into Yue Zhong through the god and devil imprint. Yue Zhong quietly assessed, after killing the Type 5 Ancestor casually, the combat ability of these vampires truly cannot compare to the mid-grade Dino-Generals. Within the box, all the women and girls stared at Yue Zhong, their eyes filled with shock. They were clear about the might of a Type 5 Ancestor. Such a terrifying freak had actually been obliterated by Yue Zhong in a few moves, where he could not even escape. This was beyond their understanding. Phantom came up to Yue Zhong's side and asked, "What do we do about these women?" Yue Zhong glanced at Sima Bing and said, "Bring them out. I have something to do." Under the aphrodisiac, Sima Bing's eyes were already opened, and her limbs were coiled around Yue Zhong, wriggling incessantly. Her face was flushed, and her body was drenched in perspiration. Phantom glanced at Yue Zhong silently, before barking coldly at the remaining women, "Go." The beautiful women and girls walked out obediently behind Phantom. They had been through the toughest and strictest of training and knew how to follow the orders of the strong. Yue Zhong also could not hold himself back and kissed Sima Bing. The moment Sima Bing felt the presence and touch of Yue Zhong, her passion was reignited, and she began to claw at his clothes, kissing him deeply as though her life depended on it. Both of them became entwined on a huge bed, frantically exploring each other with their hands and mouths. At the same time that Yue Zhong was enjoying himself with Sima Bing, an army of 10,000 led by Luo Qingqing invaded Ghost City. The human soldiers who were equipped with the tech of the Third World were almost unstoppable. Many flesh-eaters and vampires appeared, only to be blasted by laser guns and electromagnetic cannons. The Type 5 experts were rare existences in this second world, with the majority residing within Saint City. Ghost City only had Vanitam's. In fact, he was only here to wipe out the human resistance, as well as to indulge in his depraved games with the human girls. Soon, the entire city was brought under Luo Qingqing's control. Sun Lan Lan was currently leading a few officials to establish a new government swiftly, transforming Ghost City. After their throes of passion, Sima Bing laid in Yue Zhong's embrace, gasping slightly. Her snow-white shoulders laid against his broad chest, her eyes filled with a complicated gaze. She had never expected she would become Yue Zhong's woman like this. Sima Bing had a favorable impression of Yue Zhong. However, it was a position of respect and reverence, not love. Being thrust in this position was slightly uncomfortable for her. Yue Zhong felt uncomfortable as well, being stared at by her. He propped her up while running his fingers over her delicate skin, asking, "Why are you here?" Sima Bing's brows arched as she snorted coldly and spoke with a slightly resentful tone. "Somebody disappeared, leaving behind a mess for us to clear. The flesh-eaters and vampires had used their all to whittle away at our strength. Many of our brothers and comrades have died. Why didn't you come back slightly later, when we're all dead? Wouldn't that be better?" Yue Zhong frowned and asked, "I remember having made some preparations before I left. Everyone was to lie low. How did things become like this?" Sima Bing sighed softly. "Those flesh-eaters and vampires are truly too vicious. They captured many of our comrades, using them as bait. Many of us could not stand by and watch them be killed, thus they fell for the traps. Many traitors also appeared. I had been sold out by one myself. That was why I was captured and brought here." Yue Zhong was not a god, and could not possibly plan for everything perfectly. Although he had made preparations, there was no way of ensuring that everyone followed his orders. The resistance was also made up of humans with flesh and blood. They could not possibly be like puppets and robots that could follow Yue Zhong's orders completely. Yue Zhong asked, "Are you still able to contact Jess and the rest?" Sima Bing shook her head. "No. In order to prevent any more traitors, the moment there's a large-scale movement, other than the top echelon, no one will know where is the next location. Since I've been caught, they would have moved to a location that I do not know of." Yue Zhong fell silent before slowly replying, "That's the case, eh? Then forget it. Let them come to me themselves." Sima Bing suddenly asked with some expectations, "Yue Zhong, are you already a Type 5 Divine Warrior?" Yue Zhong did not hide it. "That's right, I'm already a Type 5 Divine Warrior." Sima Bing was slightly indignant. "That's unfair. We were all Type 3 Divine Warriors. Why is it only you that could evolve so fast? Are you really blessed and chosen by the gods?" Yue Zhong kissed her forehead lightly and chuckled. "Maybe." After taking down Go City, Yue Zhong's forces did not stop, instead splitting into 6 different units led by Han Xiong, Malay, Xiao Yun, Lu Tai, Luo Qingqing, and Han Zixian separately. These units started to invade the surrounding cities. With their equipment, the nearby cities were all taken down easily, the city guards within annihilated. The humans that migrated from the Third World then shifted into these cities, occupying and somewhat stabilizing themselves. The Second World had suffered much from a nuclear warfare in the past, thus, the environment was much harsher than the Third World. Other than the cities, the rest of the outer zones were filled with irradiated devils, savage ones, living corpses, mutant beasts, as well as the radiation. It was really tough for humans to survive. Under such circumstances, Yue Zhong could not help but launch assault after assault, taking down the cities. With the relentless advance of his troops, it was not long before over 20 cities had been occupied by Yue Zhong. The number of cities and the speed that they were taken down at finally alarmed Saint City. Within Saint City, inside the White Tower, a number of Type 5 ancestors sat on 2 rows of golden thrones. At the 4 highest seats, the 4 rare Saint Kings were seated as well. The gazes of the Type 5 ancestors all fell upon these Saint Kings. Saint King Wayland spoke up, "Today I have summoned everybody here to report something. Yue Zhong has resurfaced, bringing with him a large number of humans. These humans possess weapons that surpass the technology of this world. They also have countless experts. We have already lost 28 cities." Chapter 929, 8 Armies. Chapter 929, 8 Armies. What? How did this happen? Saint King Wayland. How many forces does Yue Zhong have? Saint King Wayland. How much strength does Yue Zhong possess himself? The countenances of the numerous Type 5 ancestors all changed, as they could not help but ask. After the first war with the humans, these ancestors knew the threat of a person with a god and devil imprint. They would either die out fast under various dangerous circumstances or become extremely strong, extremely quickly. If Yue Zhong were to reach a Type 6 realm, then the entire Saint Clan would be helpless against him. Death would be all that awaited them, or they could consider fleeing to the radiated zones. Saint King Wayland waved his hands as a number of alluring women in tight clothing came out, giving out documents to the various Type 5 ancestors. "This is the information on Yue Zhong's army. Take a look." They quickly flipped through the information in front of them. A Type 5 Divine Warrior would have enhancements on every part of their body. Most of them just had to take a look, and they could easily process the information quickly. One Type 5 Saint Clan expert scanned through the documents, and his face fell. Who could have expected his strength to grow so explosively? He even managed to recruit other Type 5 experts. Luo Qingqing was incredibly powerful. Even a peak Type 4 vampire would be easily pierced to death by her. Those who exchanged clashes with her could immediately tell that she was a Type 5 expert. Gu Mu, recognizable with his long, plaited ponytail, had a vicious look in his eyes. "That's why we must kill him. right before he becomes even more powerful. I recommend for all our forces to be deployed, split into 8 armies, wiping out all those darn humans. I agree. Same here. We cannot let him grow. We have to cut off his growth right now. Killing intent began to pour out of the numerous Type 5 ancestors. They had all experienced the sacred war for themselves and knew how dangerous it was for a person with the god and devil world to develop. Saint King Wayland quickly made his decision. Fine. It's dangerous. We shall activate our forces immediately to wipe out Yue Zhong. The moment White Tower made its decision, the entire Saint City became a hubbub of activity. Countless human soldiers that had been brainwashed by the Saint clan were activated, donning on their equipment, and formed various units. Under the lead of the various Saint clan generals, they separated into 8 major armies, marching on towards Go City. Go City had already become the temporary capital for Yue Zhong's army, with many humans passing through each day. The total number of residents had already reached 600,000. The city was bustling with activity, and it looked prosperous, a vast difference from when the city was still under the rule of the Saint clan. Yue Zhong stood in a tall building, gazing down at the activity below, and could not help but feel a sense of achievement. A soldier came up to him, reporting, "Your Majesty, someone requests an audience." Yue Zhong replied indifferently. With his current identity, he would not just meet anybody. Within Go City, there were already 600,000 people. If everyone wanted to see him, then his time would be wasted on them. The soldier replied, "Someone called Luo Chun. Send them in." Not long after, 2 men and 2 women entered the room, led by the reporting soldier. Yue Zhong swept his gaze across them, his eyes flashing with joy as he stepped forward to hug a little girl with short, blue hair, dressed in military uniform. She was extremely cute, yet interestingly valiant with her attire. "Floxinia, you're fine. Thank goodness." This beautiful and adorable lowly Floxinia had the ability to read minds, and her ability was extremely useful, almost as precious as a white silver-gray treasure of hope. The human heart was hard to fathom, and human relationships were tricky and delicate. Yue Zhong had numerous subordinates. However, he did not know who was loyal to him, or who were pawn pieces placed by his enemies. With Floxinia with him, he could control his organization better, preventing any potential dangers from lurking. Floxinia could sense Yue Zhong's genuine joy accurately, and she leaped into his arms like a docile cat, enjoying his warmth, at the same time feeling a strong sense of security envelop her. In his embrace, she revealed a bright smile. "Brother Yue Zhong, I've missed you so. How come you only came back now? I missed you so badly." The other pretty woman, Lisa, saw how Floxinia was behaving, and her eyeballs nearly popped out. When Yue Zhong had left, everyone was in anxiety. Floxinia had started to cleanse the organization mercilessly, ousting any traitor or spy that she caught ruthlessly. Under her orders, over 200 people had died. Many of the resistance soldiers were fearful of this little devil. The moment they faced her, their legs would turn to jelly and their backs broke out in perspiration. They did not dare to let their thoughts wander. Only Jess, Luo, Chun, and Lisa, whose minds were resolute and had nothing to hide, dared to stay by her side. If it wasn't for her efforts to cleanse the organization and instill fear, the resistance would have long since fallen at the pressure of the Saint clan. Luo Chun swept the room a glance before his eyes landed on Yue Zhong, his gaze full of respect. "Leader, you're truly the savior of the legends. From a single trip, you actually gained such a powerful force. Truly admirable." Within the room, there were a total of 8 Type 4 experts. It was truly a force to behold. After all, before Yue Zhong had joined the resistance, 8 Type 4 experts were enough to eradicate a large part of the resistance. Now, such experts were just Yue Zhong's guards. It was naturally shocking to Luo Chun. Yue Zhong chuckled. "It's been hard on you during my absence, Luo Chun." When Yue Zhong had disappeared, The responsibility of leading the resistance had fallen on Luo Chen's shoulders. He had to support the weight of the organization, pulling strings on multiple fronts, expending much resources and energy. Luo Chen replied without minding it. It's what I should do. As long as we can annihilate those damn flesh-eaters, I'm willing to do anything. Luo Chen's face turned serious. All right, leader, you guys have conquered 28 cities at one go. It has definitely alerted Saint City. They have already deployed their forces, split out in 8 different directions. The total size should be over 1 million, and they're marching on to us right now. Leader, please make your due preparations. The Second World and the Third World were vastly different. The conditions of the Second World were extremely harsh, with numerous radiation zones. The roads were not suitable for large armies to move. Furthermore, humans were different from Dino warriors. If they were out on the field, the pressure on the logistics and support was extremely heavy. The deployment of 1 million troops would require countless more support. Thus, the Saint Clan had no choice but to split them up into 8 armies. Otherwise, the support line would crumble. Yue Zhong laughed. I've already known about this for a while. You're right on time. I've something for you to do. Yue Zhong was also a long-time combatant. After conquering 28 cities, he had immediately deployed his experts to scatter the robotic flies and dragonflies to conduct surveillance. At the same time, he had Type 4 recon officers planted near Saint City. The moment Saint City deployed its army, he had already known about it. Luo Chen saw how calm Yue Zhong was, and his originally anxious heart grew calm. He trusted Yue Zhong to lead them through this crisis. Yes, Your Majesty. Out in the desolate and vast wilderness, a number of infantry vehicles rolled along, escorted by countless machine gun vehicles, heavy tanks, IFVs, rocket launchers as well as rocket launchers. In the skies, there were over hundreds of assault helicopters. These assault helicopters were already off the control of a central computer piloted manually, but he had no way of controlling them. The Saint Clan had known of Yue Zhong as well as the super AI that he controlled. They would not commit the mistake of allowing him control their troops. One particular Type 4 flesh-eater expert roared out with his voice, "Listen up, everybody! I shall announce this here. As long as we can conquer Yellowwood City, the army will be on rest for 5 days. These 5 days, you can do what you like. The first person to invade the city shall be promoted by 3 ranks, as well as conferred the title of nobility. You will also be transformed into one of the Saint Clan, enjoying immortality, riches, and power." The voice of the Type 4 flesh-eater spread far and wide, causing the blood of the human soldiers to pump. The break of military rule meant that these soldiers could do whatever they wanted, including killing, pillaging, and raping. Also, by transforming into one of the Saint Clan, they would advance in life, enjoying the pleasures that came with it. Kill, 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 kill. Inside the infantry vehicles, the soldiers began to call out like riled-up beasts, their morale raised to a high. The leader of the troop, the Type 5 vampire Denier, nodded with satisfaction. Very good. Morale can work wonders. This troop will surely go all out to invade Yellowwood City. A mere Yellowwood City. How will you stand under the assault of my 150,000-strong army? Chapter 930. Defeating the 8 Armies. Chapter 930. Defeating the 8 Armies. Within a secret command center in a valley, Han Xiong eyed the 150,000-strong army that was wide open and ordered coldly, "Bunch of fools, attack!" The moment she gave the order, countless energy cannons hidden within a forest began to fire. With a bright burst of light, a number of large white orbs blasted down on the Saint Clan troops, instantly obliterating large patches of them. Enemy attack! Enemy attack! Faced with this sudden assault, the 150,000-strong army was plunged into chaos, the various commanders shouting and hollering. Denier frowned from within his vehicle. What the hell is going on? Damn it, where's the enemy? Where are they? Currently, there was no visible enemy within the vicinity, and yet they were being bombarded by volleys of firepower. It nearly caused them to fall apart. Many of the soldiers turned pale, fleeing in various directions. Even when barked at by their commanders, there was no way of stopping them. One vampire came up to Denier, asking anxiously, "Esteemed Ancestor, what do we do now?" Denier barked, "How the hell should I know? Go find a human commander. Only they know how to command." Denier was a Type 5 expert, but he wasn't versed in the art of war. In the past, he had commanded zombies against humans. With a single order, the horde of zombies would just surge forward, tearing the humans apart without care for their own lives. When they met with a tough obstacle, he would then step forward and use his might to crush the human resistance. In terms of command, he was clueless. The vampire's face turned pale as he answered quickly, "Yes," before leaving quickly. As the Saint Clan troops fell into chaos, 10,000 mech fighters, 100 energy tanks, 20 Reapers as well as 200 laser anti-air vehicles rolled out onto the battlefield. The 20 Reapers and 200 laser gun anti-air vehicles had terrifying firepower. Under the relentless firing of beams, the assault helicopters in the skies blew up in flames and fell out of the sky. At the same time, the 100 energy tanks began to fire multiple shots into the Saint Clan troops, causing their own armored vehicles to be blasted apart. The human troops of the Saint Clan had undergone strict military training before, hence, some of the elite troops still continued to attack. However, when the ordinary bullets struck those energy tanks, they were deflected off easily, not dealing the slightest bit of damage at all. Ordinary bullets and heavy-caliber bullets were unable to damage the mech fighters as well. Only the cannons could destroy them. However, their artillery forces had been destroyed together with the assault helicopters in the first instance, making it hard for them to retaliate. After holding out for a while, the 150,000-strong troop was on the verge of collapse, with pieces of abandoned armor and weapons laying everywhere. Human soldiers were fleeing for their lives, stepping over themselves, and the injury count was too high to boot. No running. Those who flee will be executed. Fight! Get back here and fight! A number of flesh-eaters and vampires began to scream at the fleeing soldiers as they tore some of them apart, hoping to make an example out of them. It was a cruel and gory sight. Faced with those threats, the human soldiers were filled with dread. Many turned around desperately, rejoining the battle. However, they were faced with those still swarming from the forefront. They were thus knocked down and stomped over by the stampede. Once the tides of the battle were not in their favor, it was hard for them to fight back. However, the vampires and flesh-eaters were still slaughtering those deserters to little effect. One particular type, 4 flesh-eater, had a vicious glint in his eyes. He grabbed hold of a deserter and tore him apart in two, the fresh blood and organs splattering all over himself. His appearance was like that of a bloodthirsty devil, as he roared out, "Damn it, all you cowards, after we go back, I will turn all your families into slaves. We will chop off their heads and dig out their hearts to drink their blood." When human soldiers saw this, many were filled with dread and fear and stopped in their tracks. At this moment, a dozen electromagnetic beams shot from afar, penetrating the head of the Type 4 flesh-eater, causing it to burst apart like a watermelon. The laser and electromagnetic beams shot out, reaping the lives of the various flesh-eaters and vampires. This time, the surge of retreating soldiers could not be held back anymore, and they fled madly. Denier's temper flared at the sight of the escaping soldiers. He had not expected that the 150,000-strong army of his would crumble just like that. Fuck. Damn trash. Useless trash. These humans are all a bunch of trash. Human soldiers and zombies were different. When casualties reached a certain number, other than those with strong faith and training who would stay on to fight, most other humans would despair and value their lives more. Denier's past strategies of leading zombies were not applicable to the humans. Furthermore, The army that Yue Zhong had brought over from the Third World possessed more powerful technology. It was basically bullying already. Damn trash, when I get back, I will definitely gorge on the hearts of 100 virgins. He cursed out in rage, looking at the battlefield helplessly before gritting his teeth and hollering, "Retreat!" Under his orders, the remaining thousands of vampires and flesh-eaters darted through the battlefield, quickly retreating. On the battlefield, a large amount of equipment, ammunition, and weapons were left behind. This leftover equipment and ammunition were enough for Yue Zhong to arm a few units of his troops. Han Xiong looked at the fleeing Saint Clan army, and her mouth broke into a smile. These monsters dare to go against us humans in warfare? What a bunch of retards. At the same moment that the human troops of the Saint City were defeated, a 2,000-strong unit of elites that were armed to the teeth was riding enhanced laser motorcycles quickly joined the battle, chasing after the fleeing soldiers. The humans ran and cried, throwing away their armor, while many fell. "Damn flies, come back with me, kill them." Dinier saw the motorcycle unit chasing after them, and his eyes flashed with a savage glint. He suddenly turned behind, his body darting and directly charging through the motorcycle unit. The moment he entered the midst, Dinier revealed the frightening might of a Type 5 expert. He turned into a beam of blood that darted through the soldiers. Anywhere that his blood touched, the soldiers would become emaciated and devoid of blood. The rest of the Type 4 vampires and flesh-eaters were filled with bloodlust as well, pouncing on the motorcycle warriors with ferocity, unleashing a massacre right where they were. In terms of close combat, ordinary human soldiers were not a match for these vampires and flesh-eaters. With Dinier leading the counterattack, the 2,000 elite motorcycle unit was defeated and forced to retreat. The ability to turn the tides of a battle was precisely something a Type 5 expert could carry out. As Dinier was rampaging through the elite soldiers, a number of laser-mounted vehicles extended their prism laser cannons from afar. Dinier was suddenly filled with a sense of crisis. Without hesitating, he transformed into over 100 bats, doing his best to escape from the location. In an instant, the thick beam of laser shot past their locations, disintegrating hundreds of bats into ashes that fell to the floor. The Saint Clan Ancestor is dead. The Saint Clan Ancestor is dead. Seeing their Type 5 Ancestor perishing under the lasers, the remaining vampires and flesh-eaters were all shocked. Their morale dipped drastically, and they began to flee in various directions. Han Xiong led her army to defeat hundreds of vampires and flesh-eaters, before bringing the troops to capture those captives and collect the loot. At almost the same time of Han Xiong's attack, Luo Qingqing, Lu Tai, Lu Du, Han Zixian, Zheng Yinhe, Ma Lei, and Xiao Yin were all leading their own troops to attack the Saint Army 8 armies in the various locations as well. On one hand, there were the human elites who had gone through countless battles, equipped with powerful weapons. On the other, a backward troop with numbers but inexperience. The Saint Clan's army was accosted on all fronts, losing their weapons as they crumbled within, suffering losses and fleeing soldiers. Luo Qingqing also killed one Type 5 Ancestor by herself. In a single battle, the entire world was shaken. When Luo Qin knew of all these, he was overjoyed, and his faith was strengthened. Amazing! This is truly too overbearing. You're truly as the legends described. Leader Yue Zhong is too powerful. Sima Bing sucked in a breath of cold air, her gaze complicated when she got wind of the battle report. What an impressive fellow. Jess was elated, laughing. Indeed, the prophecy was right. With him as our leader, our human race would likely rise from the ashes. The news of the Saint City's defeat at the hands of the resistance soon traveled through all the cities in the Second World. The lowest caste and slaves in the various cities began to get in contact with the resistance. The news also naturally traveled to the Saint Clan within the White Tower. By this time, they were thoroughly shocked. They did not dare to underestimate Yue Zhong further. He was already in existence with enough power on his hands to threaten their very lives. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.